Hello， 大家好啊！歡迎嚟到天下知多啲，我係 Dennis。今日咧就提早咗啊，準時都唔係準時噶啦，都遲咗5分鐘。咁啊，希望咧就多啲朋友入嚟。而家等啲朋友入嚟咧，因為啲 notification 咧就唔係即刻到嘅。等啲朋友開始入嚟啦，有翻咁上下人頭咧，我就正式可以開始啦。咁啊，希望大家幫手入嚟點讚留言點讚啦，最緊要，因為唯有呢個方法咧，先至可以有流量啊。所以就呢個就係 YouTube 就係咁噶啦，冇計咁啊，今日咧就豐富，亦都係繼續有豐富嘅題目俾大家。希望大家嚟幫手留言點讚啦，我都 share 咗佢，應該 share 啲 group 嚟，而家要等啲人入嚟啫。咁啊，今日咧就4個題目㗎。如果你有睇我嗰個背景咧，都開翻個背景俾大家四個題目㗎。簡單嚟講，4個題目。咪而家先出到去啊！咁而家咧陣間咧就會有條片咧，就會講呢個佢叫呢個以色列嘅總理咧，就會講佢嘅計劃點樣剷除哈馬斯。咁我哋開始咧，我就會同大家享受一下先。一啲好消息，就俾大家可以睇到呢個阿 Trump 呢個200日啊！哇，做咗幾多嘢出嚟？你難以置信啊！呢個200日可以做咗咁多嘢出嚟，咁啊同大家可以一齊享受睇下阿 Trump 做咗200日做咗啲乜嘢咧？啲訪問呢個係咧，我就用 Newsmax 個 video 嘅。跟住亦都會講NVIDIA 陳仁勳同埋我唔記得佢叫咩名啦。呢個 AMD 呢個 NVIDIA 佢哋就賣晶片翻俾大陸啊。咁而家咧佢賣晶片嘅利潤咧就會俾15% 稅。咁我就覺得好似少咗啲咯。咁我陣間亦都會講下點解覺得佢咁少咯。跟住咧，因為琴日嗰條片咧，我播完之後，當我想做評論嗰陣時咧，就唔記得我開聲，所以我今日又補翻做評論啦。咁佢其實重點咧就係想俾大家睇神愛我哋嘅心咧，就喺呢塊布就已經可以睇到啊。所以我就想再講翻咯，補充翻咯，因為琴日我開聲嗰個唔記得開聲咯咁啊，而家有11位觀眾啊，多謝。仲有咧，我而家係991個訂閱啦，有1000個訂閱咧，我就會俾一啲驚喜俾大家。呢個驚喜咧，仲爭9個咋，仲爭9個訂閱咋，所以好需要大家嚟幫手啊！幫手支持，你分享出去話俾人知，喂，過嚟幫手訂閱啦，你老友嚟㗎你自己唔睇都唔緊要啊，你去訂閱就得㗎啦。係咁㗎啦，有時啲好似我有即係當然啦，你一定要對我信任先得啦。好似我見到鬱文嗰啲彈咗出嚟，我都唔係成日有時間睇佢，同埋佢而家咧就其實麻煩啲嘅，分3節，我覺得好麻煩嘅。睇完一節，但係咧就 consolidate，即係佢個主題咯，分主題咯。咁 咁咧我就會有時真係會撳一撳 like 啊，撳一撳 share 去 Facebook 嗰度，撳完我就走噶啦。其實入邊有冇講嘢我都唔知，講乜我都唔知。啲朋友就係咁用噶嘛，大佬啊，好似啊有個老友又係咁嘅，佢都唔得閒睇嘅。我知道佢冇睇嘅嚇，但係佢次次佢都見到嘅話咧，佢都係撳咗個 like 嚇。如果佢有時間咧，佢仲會留幾句嘅，又話 hello 咁啊，就走咗去。啲咪老友咯，係嘛？咁我哋陣間咧就會睇嚇，享受下呢條片，因為我哋即係你知咧，左媒咧就即係喺呢200日入邊，啲左媒咧就不停咁樣攻擊我哋噶嘛嚇，攻擊我哋呢啲 MAGA 嘅嚇，即係放好多假新聞啊咁樣啊踩我哋嘅，但係我哋事實嚟講就已經好多嘢我哋見到啦，尤其是前2日嗰個世紀和平協議簽咗個同亞美尼亞同一個叫做亞乜鬼嗰個好難讀個名，嗰啲國家咁樣一齊去即係整咗和平。嗰個喺geopolitics咧，喺地緣政治入邊係非常重要嘅位置嚟噶嘛。佢呢2個國家上邊就俄羅斯，下邊就伊朗嚇，佢正夾正中間嗰個國家。咁如果阿 Trump 可以幫到佢哋和平，咁佢哋大家發達，呢2個國家都可以發達。咁我亦都講到阿 Trump 做一啲嘢咧，就真係超難度㗎，因為咧佢唔可以淨係呢啲國家贏㗎嘛，又唔可以淨係佢自己贏㗎嘛，所以佢話要American First 同埋 MAGA 啫 ，Make America Great Again 啫。所以喺同時之間，佢唔第二啲人佢唔會話淨係俾你贏㗎嘛，佢哋都要贏㗎嘛。所以喺3贏嘅局面，要喺3贏嘅局面裏邊咧，取得一個協議出嚟。所以阿 Trump 真係 deal maker 嚟㗎嚇。咁仲有不單止咁啦，不單止佢 deal maker，佢而家15號，我琴日嗰條片就係講解釋佢呢個15號嘅重要性嚇。咁希望咁而家多咗好多朋友入嚟啦，好多謝大家啦。咁我哋係準備去開始呢個嘅慶祝大典啦，不如我哋叫。
President Trump 200, glad you're here. I'm Rob Finnerty. Throughout the night, we're going to look at many of President Trump's accomplishments in his first 200 days in office, a list that includes historic border numbers, trade deals, the lowest inflation in 4 years, the largest middle-class tax cut in American history, protecting women in sports, getting NATO nations to spend 5% of their GDP on defense, and the first government surplus since 2017. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, Border Czar Tom Homan, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Education Secretary Linda McMahon, Trade Advisor Peter Navarro, and State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce. But first, let's take a look back at the last 7 months.
The golden age of America begins right now.
He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken.
Executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. It's about time.
For the first time in history, flying over the recently renamed Gulf of America.
And welcome to the first ever White House Digital Assets Summit. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. And our country will be woke no longer. The strikes were a spectacular military success.
Father, thank you for giving us this opportunity to restore faith in this country and be a blessing to the people of America.
And to my fellow citizens, America is back.
How about that? Should get you fired up. That's 200 days, not 4 years, by the way. We start tonight with Donald Trump himself. I interviewed him on Finnerty last Friday, and I asked him what he is most proud of over the last 200 days. Take a look. Mr. President, next week we will mark 200 days, your first 200 days in office. What are you most proud of?
Maybe the fact that we've done so much, because I know you're having a hard time picking them, but the bill is the biggest bill ever passed in Congress, and it gives you so many things. Not only the biggest tax cuts, But wait till you see the job numbers. And think of this: no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security benefits for our seniors and things. I mean, the numbers are staggering. No tips on overtime, no tax on overtime. The way it looks, one of the things we did, it's like that bill is so full of goodies for people. You go out, buy a car, you could never deduct interest. If you're a wealthy person, you're allowed deductions. If you're a middle-income person or whatever, you go buy a car, you borrow money from a bank, we're letting you deduct your interest payments from taxes. We have so many things in that bill and so many things health-related. And I think it's maybe one of the things I'm most proud of. But I think most proud of that we've been able to do so much in so little time.
Is there something in the next 200 days that you absolutely want to get done?
I want to put the things that we've gotten for the people of this country in a bill that was shocking that we were able to get it. Most people thought it would never pass. You know, they thought you'd have to do it in 8 or 9 different bills, and you'd never be able to do that because there's nothing in a lot of those bills for anybody to approve. You'd never get them approved. So the concept was there's something in this for everybody. I want to really implement a lot of the things that we had. Look, we want to have a safe country. We want to get rid of crime. We have to bring back a lot of very, very bad people that were put here by the Biden administration. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing so much on health. We're bringing back so many different things. Bobby Kennedy's doing such a great job. But we have, I want to implement many of the things that we have in the bill that just got passed, that frankly was passed where people never believed it was possible to get it done. We got all those things done. Now I want to implement them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
MAGA will be part of the president's legacy when it's all said and done, but I thought it was fascinating. Off camera, he told me how proud he was of military recruitment numbers and where they've come over the last 7 months of his presidency, setting records on a monthly basis in some cases. All right, joining us now for more on the president's first 200 days in office is Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Great to see you, Stephen. In your opinion, what's been the president's biggest accomplishment so far in the last 200 days?
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be with you here to celebrate the president's 200th day in office. Rob, and I just want to say how much I appreciate you and your audience and the groundbreaking work that you've done in recent months covering this presidency.
Thank you.
Look, there have been so many achievements over the last 200 days. Where do we even begin? We have a trade deal, a groundbreaking, incredible, historic trade deal with the European Union, Korea, and Japan. 3 of the hardest trade deals to achieve really around the world. You have a complete rebalancing of our economic relationship with China. You have brought America's defense to the forefront with the largest investment in our national security, including the plan to construct the Golden Dome missile defense shield. You have the uprooting of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion across the whole federal government and the private sector. You have, of course, the largest package of tax cuts in American history, the full extension of the Trump tax cuts, plus Trump baby savings accounts, plus you have full expensing for manufacturing companies that bring their jobs back into America, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. You have us taking back our government from the rogue bureaucracy and from the deep state and the exposing of all the crimes the deep state has committed against the American people. And you have the fact that our jobs market now is producing jobs for Americans. You have, for the first time in memory, all job growth going to American workers and no job growth going to illegal aliens.
Right.
No one can remember the last time that happened, especially over the last 4 years. If I had to pick one thing, if you really pushed me, and it's so much, I would say, of course, the fact that there have been 0 illegal aliens let into the country across the southern border the last 3 months in a row. You know, one of the biggest issues that was litigated in this campaign was about border security and sovereignty, and now for 3 straight months, 0 illegal aliens were let through the southern border. But above it all, I'll just end with this. It's the reawakening of the American spirit, putting our country first, our people first, our citizens first. In every interaction around the world, we have a president now who is defending with every ounce of his being the well-being of the American people.
That's so well stated, Stephen, and thank you for the comments at the beginning. I want to ask you about the 10, 15, 20 million illegal aliens that came into this country during the previous administration. How important is it that illegals are not counted as part of the next census?
Well, I mean, this is such a fundamental issue to our democracy. So think about this conversation we've been having, you've been covering, about apportionment and about gerrymandering and about representation in Congress. Democrats have stolen, depending upon how you count it, and no one really knows the number for sure, right? No one knows, right? But just being conservative, Democrats have stolen 20 to 30 House seats by counting illegal aliens in the census. I mean, just think about that for a second. They stole 20 or 30 House seats by counting illegal aliens in the census. And now you have Democrats talking about, oh, Republicans can't change their congressional maps? You have literally brought invaders into this country by the tens of millions to rig the results of the census and the apportionment of our congressional seats. And then on top of that, of course, you have a situation where even though Republicans won a landslide in the House popular vote, Democrats have so thoroughly rigged and gerrymandered and manipulated their districts beyond all recognition that Republicans only gained a 4-seat majority, despite winning a much smaller majority in the popular vote in 2010 and getting 63 seats. Remember the 2010 election? A much smaller popular vote majority produced 63 seats. So, look, Democrats cheat. We all know Democrats cheat. We've all understood that. But they're counting of illegal aliens in the census. They have to be excluded. The Commerce Department, under the leadership of Howard Lutnick, is working on a plan now to make sure that we do, in fact, exclude illegal aliens from the census.
Stephen Miller, great to see you again. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, as we head to break, some trivia for you at home. The question, how many border encounters were there in the last 200 days? That answer with border czar Tom Homan next. The question was, how many border encounters were there in the first 200 days of Donald Trump's presidency? The answer was B, 35,494. Great music. All right, earlier you heard the president talk about how proud he is of the work that he's done at the southern border, that's being done at the southern border. We now have the most secure border in modern American history after a 4-year period where millions upon millions of illegal aliens poured into the country each year, and Joe Biden told us the border was closed. In the month of July, for a 3rd year in a row, 0 illegal aliens were released into the country, and the focus will now turn to sanctuary cities where Democrats are prioritizing illegal aliens over the safety of their own citizens. Okay, joining us now for more is border czar Tom Homan. Tom, good to see you. Let's go back a little ways. Trump marking 200 days in office tonight. The bar was set pretty low for you. The only other border czar we've ever had in history was Kamala Harris, and she told us throughout the course of 4 years that the border was closed as millions of illegal aliens poured over the southern border. Can you take us through how Donald Trump's election changed things at both the southern and the northern border?
Look, it was a complete 180, right? It was a drastic change. We went from historic illegal immigration, numbers we've never seen before, numbers we never came close to before. 10.5 million illegal aliens came to the border that we know of, right? We're not talking about the gotaways. 10.5 million came to the border in Joe Biden. And President Trump, within 7 weeks, President Trump gave us the most secure border in the history of this nation. And the numbers prove it. And so he did in 7 weeks what Joe Biden couldn't and wouldn't do in 4 years. So great success. And again, as I stand here today, I've been doing this for over 40 years. It's certainly the lowest numbers I've ever seen, but going back in history books, we can't find a more secure border in the history of this nation than we have today.
Let's say Trump wasn't reelected in November. What happens at the southern border under a Kamala Harris-run administration?
Look, what Joe Biden did, it's going to take us a decade to really address everything, all the damage she's done. Even though we're running at record speeds, we will have the largest deportation operation in history, but again, we're talking about 10 million people. If Kamala Harris would have won, we never would have been able to fix it. There's no way if we had another 10, 12 million come to the border, we just we'll never have the assets to chase them down and move them. But that was her plan. Look, I said many times, the open border under Biden wasn't mismanagement, it wasn't incompetence. It was by design. So thank God President Trump won, because we turned it completely around. First of all, Trump 45, the most secure border ever. Joe Biden comes in, unsecures it on purpose. Then President Trump gets back in. We even beat Trump 45. The numbers are the lowest ever, even lower than Trump 45. So God help us if she would have won. We would never been able to fix the damage that would have been done.
Take a listen to Michigan Senator. This is Alyssa Slotkin calling you out earlier this week. Take a listen.
Thomas Holmgren, who runs border policy largely from the White House, they have been a disaster. They have been un-American. They have done things that I have heard this morning in Grand Rapids from our Latino Chamber of Commerce that make you feel you are in an autocratic nation, right? And even some of the most ardent Trump voters in our state will pull me aside and say, you know, I don't like this grabbing people off the street.
Thomas Holmgren, I don't know how she got that from Tom Homan, but how do you respond to that, Thomas?
Well, she's okay. Again, she just proved that she's not very smart, obviously. But bottom line is, what we're doing is making this country safe again. What we're doing is correct. And here's a congressperson, elected official, who buried her head in the sand under the Biden administration. We had the highest level of sex trafficking of women and children in the history of this nation. We are the highest level of national security threats coming across that border. We have over 500,000 children smuggled in the country, and they lost track of 300,000. Sex trafficking women and children all-time high. The migrant deaths over 4,000, historic high. Historic high of Americans dying from fentanyl, 250,000. And she hit her head in the sand, didn't say a damn thing. President Trump has fixed this in 7 weeks. Overdose death, down. Sex trafficking, down. No suspected terrorists coming across the border, non-existent. Number released into the United States, 0. The most secure border in the history of this nation. We're doing exactly what the American people voted for. And if there's any distraction from Trump voters that we're doing too much, it's because of the fake media. The fake media says we're arresting more non-criminals than criminals, and that we're separating families, we're deporting U.S. citizens. It's ridiculous. I look at the numbers every morning. 70% of everybody ICE arrests is a criminal. Fact. Who are the rest? National security threats and fine orders. As far as the border, most secure ever. And we found over 13,000 of the children she didn't care about under the Biden administration. We've already found 13,000. Some we actually rescued out of sex trafficking and forced labor trafficking. So we're doing what exactly the American people voted for. And if she doesn't understand that, then she's an embarrassment to the position she holds, because her first responsibility is protection of her communities, protection of the citizens of this nation. That's exactly what we're doing.
Tom Homan, great to see you tonight. Congratulations on the past 200 days. Appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, when Donald Trump appointed Linda McMahon to become the next Secretary of Education, her job was big. It started with downsizing the department at the federal level, but what she's done in 200 days is a lot more than that. The Education Department is already 50% smaller than it was 200 days ago. The budget, which was full of waste, has been reduced by over $12 billion. Think about that, in 200 days. There's also been a return to common sense in the classroom. DEI is no longer being taught in public schools. Men can no longer use the ladies' room or the girls' room in public schools across America, and men are no longer allowed to compete in women's sports. Universities are also being held responsible for their attacks on Jewish students. Parents now have the ability to decide what's best for their children, not the Democrat-run teachers' unions and people like Randy Weingarten. And for the first time in a long time, school is actually about learning and not indoctrination. Joining us now for more is the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Madam Secretary, so nice to have you on. How would you assess the president's first 200 days in office, in your view?
Well, my goodness, you just went through a lot of what we've been accomplishing, but I can certainly say that the president's first 200 days have just been nothing short of amazing. Keeping up with things pretty tough. I think he signed, over 160 some executive orders already as well. But we've been focusing here, primarily on three big issues, some of which, you already covered. We have really been looking at higher education, the deals that we're able to get through with Columbia and with Brown and with UPenn, addressing different issues there, and the continuing negotiations with Harvard. We've been executing the big, beautiful bill that had wonderful things in it for education. More money for school choice is one big item in the big, beautiful bill. And then, and lastly, we've been focused on returning education to the states. And I was really happy with the Supreme Court's ruling that allowed the president to continue to do what he was doing, allowed us continue to downsize the Department of Education.
I want to ask you about that, if I could jump in. And by the way, I
Sure.
interviewed the president on Friday, and I asked him specifically about you. And Madam Secretary, it is safe to say you are by far one of the president's favorites. And I'll just leave it at that because I don't want anybody else to get jealous. But believe me, I don't think I've ever witnessed this before. You were appointed to this prominent position. You've lived an amazing life. But your first task was to dismantle your own department. And you were just talking about that. You had a huge win at the Supreme Court. The decision basically allows you to cut the Department of Education by about 50% by August 1st. So that's underway. What has that transition been like over the last 200 days?
Well, I can tell you we did go ahead and make a lot of those cuts at the beginning. There were a lot of people that were on administrative leave. There were others who had taken early retirement packages, et cetera. So we have been functioning and doing a great deal of this work with the reduction in staff, already. Now the final paperwork and the final implementation of those acts, we have the green light to continue to do that. But our operation has been going, fast and furious, and I think very efficiently since we came on board. And so I'm really pleased with all of the staff here, all of the things we've been able to implement, and we've been going at a pretty good pace.
Can you describe the next 200 days for me? And then a question that I get from people all the time. Is the objective by January 2029, Donald Trump's last day in office, is the objective for the Department of Education to cease to exist completely?
Well, I can tell you what the president clearly said to me was, and this is contrary to what you hear a lot of people say, that the president wants to get rid of education. Well, clearly that is not the case. What the president wants to do is to get the bureaucracy out of education. I mean, the fact that we have to spend over 50 cents of every dollar that goes to a school for regulatory compliance is just ridiculous. Yeah. That money should be going to kids. It should be going to schools. It should be putting into teachers' pay. So what the president wants to do is to get rid of the bureaucracy. I think actually he would like to see the doors closed and all of the aspects of the Department of Education into other agencies or those that are not necessary, to be abolished. And I think that is the right way to look at it. I think we're going to have much better education in our country by returning it to the states, where governors, where state superintendents, where parents and teachers will have more involvement in teaching our students. And if we look at where our scores are today in the national report card called the NAEP scores,
yes,
when 30% of 8th graders are proficient in reading, and that means 70% are not, that's an incredibly unacceptable statistic in our country.
Yeah, and as a father, as a parent, that is something that's near and dear to my heart. Madam Secretary, please come back and see us. Congratulations and keep up the good work. Linda McMahon, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Coming up, we're going to break down the president's economic accomplishments with White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. And as we head to break, the question, how many executive orders has President Trump signed in his first 200 days? That answer when we come back. And how many executive orders has the president signed in his first 200 days? The answer was A, 184. All right. Today marks Day number 200 of Donald Trump's presidency. The economy is booming. Inflation it has a 4-year low right now. Gas is under $3 a gallon. Nationally, the NASDAQ, the S&P have both set records. The budget surplus we had in June is the first we've had since 2017. And we're setting records with trade revenue that nobody expected. Joining us now for more is White House Senior Trade Advisor and Manufacturing Advisor Peter Navarro. Great to see you.
Rob, my friend. How are you?
I'm well. It's good to have you. I'm wondering how much of what the president is doing right now on trade shapes his legacy for decades to come.
Over a century it will shape it. What President Trump is involved in on the trade front is a fundamental restructuring of an international trading environment which is fundamentally opposed to the United States. Every country in the world gets to put higher tariffs on us, impose higher non-tariff barriers, take our jobs and our factories through this more than $1 trillion deficit. I think for your viewers, Rob, the thing I can do best for you tonight is reflect on the fact that I was with the president from 2016 in the campaign. I was actually his chief economic and trade advisor. I was at Trump Tower. We were on the campaign trail. We got in there, and the president pursued an agenda much like he's doing now, which is to say deregulation, tax cuts, strategic energy dominance, and most of all, to getting tough on trade, having fair trade. The difference, Rob, is how the Trump trade policy is being welcomed now and acknowledged as working beautifully. The headwinds we faced in the first term from just about everybody, including a lot of people inside the West Wing and White House and administration, this is night and day. Everybody working for the president is pulling an oar in the right direction. And 180, I'm a little disappointed, boss. I thought we could hit one a day. We hit 184, so, you know, we missed the mark by 16. But the man is absolutely amazing, and he is the greatest president in modern history. And he was so ending the first term, but now it's just going to be amazing.
Yeah, and it sort of seems like even though the rest of the media doesn't want to admit it, they're kind of like, well, there's not much we can do when things are going this well in the West Wing for the president. Question for you. So let's say a Democrat takes over in 4 years. I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. Could they undo some of Trump's tariff deals, even if the deals are a good thing for the U.S. economy?
Of course, Rob. Well, that's what we learned with Biden-Harris. We had a beautiful trade policy in effect. We had a beautiful energy policy in effect, deregulation in effect. And the reason why the Biden regime was such an abject failure is precisely because they undid everything. On the first day, Biden basically tossed, I think it was almost 100 of Donald Trump's executive orders in the trash, many of which I had helped written or had outright written on things like Buy American and trade and everything in between. And what we had in the Biden regime is a swelling of the trade deficit, a stagnation in real wages, slower growth, just a spectacular rise in the bad way in the trade deficit, and instability around the world with China, with North Korea, with Iran, with Russia. And the legacy of President Trump will certainly be grounded in what he's doing with the economy, what he's doing with trade. He's basically rewritten the economic textbooks. But more broadly, he's also the peace president. And I mean, just since he's gotten here, I think he's brought peace in like 6 different conflicts we're seeing, including India and Pakistan, Thailand and Cambodia. And what I love about the man, watching him up close and personal, is how he goes about his business. It's direct communication with world leaders. He has great rapport with world leaders. He gets on the phone, talks things through, gets deals done, makes peace deals. And we're really blessed to have this man. I remember when I was in prison, you remember I got sent to prison for defending the Constitution. The worst day I had was July 13th, Rob. And that was the day I actually saw on the television the president get shot. And it was just, I mean, if that bullet had gone a millimeter one way or the other, we would not be having the renaissance in this country that we're having.
No, it would be more of what we had for the last 4 years. And America, again, Donald Trump, he was the first Republican in 20 years to win the popular vote in November. The last guy, George W. Bush, 2004, he didn't win 1 or 2 battleground states. He won them all, and he was competitive in places where Republicans haven't been competitive. Joe Biden, and I've said this many times, he lost to Donald Trump, Joe Biden, in 2024. So did Kamala, and then Hillary Clinton did in 2016. Donald Trump has decimated the Democratic Party to the point where this is a party that now defends illegal aliens and wants men in women's restrooms and wants men playing women's sports. And these are fundamental policies of the current Democrat Party, and that's why that party is failing. And that's part of the reason why your administration, the Trump administration, is doing so well. Peter Navarro, great to see you tonight.
Rob,
thanks so much for being with us.
All right, my brother.
We'll
celebrate those 200 days. Great, always great to be with Newsmax and you, Rob.
Thanks. See you, Peter. Thank you. When we come back, so following a string of aviation accidents and failures over the last several months, the Secretary of Transportation has a new plan that will save lives. I don't know why Mayor Pete didn't do this. That's not going to happen again. Plus, our next trivia question, our Trump trivia question. How many foreign leaders have visited the White House in the president's first 200 days? I got this wrong. Stay with us. Welcome back. The transportation system is a key part of everyday lives for millions of Americans, but for far too long, it's been neglected. Anyone who commutes to work or travels by air knows exactly what we're talking about, but all that is finally starting to change. Following a string of aviation accidents and failures over the last several months, the Secretary of Transportation has launched a plan to rebuild our air traffic control system, including upgrades at key airports across the country. After the previous Transportation Secretary, Mayor Pete, reportedly spent $80 billion on DEI grants instead of upgrading the air traffic control system throughout the country. Joining us now for more, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Mr. Secretary, good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Tonight, we're marking 200 days of the Trump presidency, and I'm just wondering, after 200 days, do you feel comfortable with where the current air traffic control system is right now in this country?
Well, comfortable where we are now. Is it safe? Yes. Is it perfect? No. We just got a historic down payment, $12.5 billion. We have the plan in place to spend that money and to make it great. It's going to take us some time, Rob. We have, we have to build telecom, a whole new telecom network that's not copper, that's fiber, new radar. We're developing a new software program that can move airplanes more efficiently through the airspace. So we're well on our way. As you know, and you reported, we have 3,000 air traffic controllers short. So we've surged more air traffic controllers into our academy. I'm paying air traffic controllers who can retire to not retire. I'm paying them to stay. And then we're looking at efficiencies and how we can stretch our controllers further. All of this takes time, but we are on the pathway to making sure that we resolve all of these delays and cancellations that take place through our airspace. It's unacceptable. The American people deserve better, but this is what happened when you have 4 years of an administration and Mayor Pete and Joe Biden that didn't give a damn. They didn't care about safety. They didn't care about building the infrastructure for the American people. They cared about a social justice network and program that, again, now will pick up the pieces from what they didn't do.
Yeah, let me just ask you briefly, what was your reaction to $80 billion in DEI grants, whatever that is?
Well, I didn't know the exact number, but I wasn't surprised. I mean, you hear them, they were trying to change names of, cockpit to flight deck, airmen to aeronaut. I mean, ridiculous things that don't do anything to get people to their homes more safely. That's what the focus was. And so, again, $80 billion, I mean, wasted. $80 billion goes a long way in building infrastructure. I could build 3 new air traffic control systems for that price. It's $31 billion apiece. I mean, they just squandered the cash, and I think the American people should be angry, frustrated, and now demand that we deliver for them.
Let me ask you about truck drivers and long-haul drivers, freight drivers across this country. I'd never thought about this until you proposed this and then the president signed the executive order. How important is it for truck drivers to speak English in this country?
Listen, it's wildly important because this has been on the American books for decades. Because if you're pulled over, or if you have a crash and you can't communicate with law enforcement or with first responders, it's a truly safety issue. Barack Obama, what he did is he took the teeth out of this rule of English only. We brought those teeth back to the pre-Obama era to go, we're going to put you out of service. We've taken 1,500 trucks out of service off the roads because the drivers couldn't speak English. And I think that's what the American people expect from us. English is the language of the United States of America.
Right.
And if you're going to get in a mobile missile, you should speak our language.
All right, 200 days of Donald Trump in the Oval Office. This week, a big topic, and you're also the acting NASA administrator. Can you tell us about this plan to build a nuclear reactor, the first on the moon by the year 2030? It's Donald Trump's space shot, moon shot. Why is this so important?
So first off, it's amazing how fast Donald Trump moves. In the vision that he has, he doesn't live within a box. There's no box around him, so anything is possible. And so on the moon, there's ice on the moon, which ice means water, water means life. The problem is you don't have a reliable energy source. Yes, we can get solar off the south pole of the moon, but we need a reliable energy source. That's going to be fission technology on the moon's surface. And so we've been studying this for a long time, spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Now it's time to move. Let's stop studying. Let's get to the moon. Let's beat the Chinese and the Russians. Let's get there first. Listen, in America, from pioneers to the pilgrims, we're explorers. This is the last frontier, and the moon is the next mission. And so Donald Trump, we talked about it. He gives complete thumbs up. Let's go fast. Let's not wait around with more studies. Let's actually move with action.
Keep going. Secretary Sean Duffy, great to have you on this evening. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. All right, the question was, how many foreign leaders have visited the White House in the president's first 200 days in office? The answer was D, 20. When we come back, do Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin really meet in person next week and end the war in Ukraine? It's a possibility. State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce joins us next to talk about America's comeback on the world stage. All right, welcome back. After 200 days, the Trump foreign policy, crystal clear. It is peace through strength, better known as peace through Trump. We went from Joe Biden asleep at the wheel to this.
When we say here at the State Department, the safety and security of Americans everywhere is our top priority, we're not kidding.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio posting on X today, quote, thanks to the president's leadership, the U.S. has helped broker a ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand as the list of foreign policy accomplishments continues to grow.
Under your leadership, we prevented and ended a war between India and Pakistan. NATO's now at 5% for the first time ever, the highest numbers ever. A peace deal between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. A 12-day war that ended with an American operation that we're the only country in the world that could have done. Hopefully, pretty soon, a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. The entire Middle East and the infrastructure of it has the potential now to change because of Syria and Lebanon, and it hasn't even been 6 months. Sure. It hasn't even been 6 months, so it's a straight testament to your leadership in this.
I'm telling you, Donald Trump is going to win the Nobel Peace Prize at some point over the next 4 years. And joining us now for more is State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce. It's great to see you, Tammy. I'm just wondering if you could, we're celebrating 200 days of Donald Trump. Could you just go through, as you see it from the State Department, the differences between Trump foreign policy and the foreign policy of the previous administration?
Well, obviously, the phrase is America's back. It's as though the country had been in a coma, that there was an abandonment, if you will, not just of our own nation, but of the world itself in the last administration. And President Trump was reelected because we already knew what he could do in the first term that he had. And he is a representation, a physical representation of the nature of America itself. America is back because Donald Trump is back. And his view of this country, yes, it's patriotic, but he loves us. He loves the people of the country. He loves what the nation stands for, but he also understands its power. He understands not just who we are now, but what we can be So when I see, and when it comes to foreign policy being here at the State Department, it is key, it's vital to have reestablished the one power center on this planet that can do good and has done good. So I think about the nature of the relationships themselves. What Donald Trump represents to other leaders in other countries is a man who says what he means what he says, and delivers. That is why the border is sealed, simply because he's present. That the attitudes and why we get to 5% with NATO is because President Trump has asked for that. They know that there's a reason to do it, that it will be better for them, and that America wants it. And that, again, they recognize the fact that, and I think this is their action indicates their recognition, that the point of view of the president and with the backing of the country means that they'll be better off.
Yeah, you think about the previous administration, wars started, Ukraine, Israel and Hamas, the southern border. That is an invasion. If 15 billion people come into your country over the course of 4 years, that's an illegal invasion. Donald Trump is ending conflicts and ending wars. We have a list. So Pakistan and India, Cambodia and Thailand, which the Secretary of State just mentioned, Congo and Rwanda. The big one right now is Russia and Ukraine, rather.
That's right.
Do you think that these leaders do, in fact, get together at some point within the next 10 days in person?
Well, you know, we know that the previous administration didn't talk to Russia for 3 years. The president understands that relationships matter. He has, of course, talked to President Putin a number of times. He's been clear with us about his opinion regarding the shifting of that relationship and whether or not he feels he can count on Putin or what Putin is really up to. But these recent events, certainly Secretary Rubio's comments and the president's, indicate that there's an understanding that something has to change. And if the president has indicated, as he has, that there is the potential for meeting, it means that he understands that, and this is all these people at the table, only Trump has brought people all over the world to the table to deal with their issues. So I do think something will happen in this regard, but I can tell you that not only is it that he is solving problems that he inherited, but we know that because of his power, we have to presume that other things have not occurred because of his strength. So it is, America is back, certainly the peace through strength, and we're seeing that displayed and demonstrated both to our friends and our enemies on a daily basis.
I'm telling you, Tammy, peace through Trump is going to catch on before we get to the end of Trump's second term.
It will.
So nice seeing you tonight. Keep up the good work. Tammy Bruce, thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Stay with us. More on Donald Trump's 200 days when we come back. White House Newsmax correspondent Michael Carter asking people what they think about the president's first 200 days in office. Take a look.
200 days in office. What's the most memorable moment?
Actually, you know, just all the trade negotiations and stuff that he's brought about, bringing more money back to the country.
I have to say our current deal with Japan is a huge one. It may be a little peace of mind to everybody that was doubtful about the tariffs.
And where are you guys from?
We're from Holland.
You're from the Netherlands. Yes, 15% tariffs.
Yes. What?
His most memorable moment, I would say, there's been a lot of them. Illegal immigration, the borders had to be closed. I think that's probably the most memorable thing is how quick he was able to close the borders.
I also like the stuff that he's doing with overtime pay.
No tax on tips, no tax on overtime.
That's a big one for me. I work like 10 hours overtime a week.
How about that right there? Really want to thank you all for joining us for our special coverage of Donald Trump's 200 days in office.
Hello， 多謝大家嘅留言，多數都係我自己有留言。今日咧就少咗好多講英文，嘅人喺度留言咯。咁啊 ，great， 即係得24 vote 嚇，即係頭先我出咗個 poll 出嚟啦，我哋嘅觀眾咧就得24個 vote， 就有都有70%。30% no 嚇，咁好 depends 嘅。咁如果響嗰啲左媒嗰啲influencer 嗰啲 channel 咧，你就會見到咧有 different story 嘅，好多時就會有唔同嘅睇法嘅，好多人。 咁我亦都好，我就其實好狹窄啦，因為我主要都係想多啲講廣東話嘅人過嚟咯。咁佢哋因為就幫助佢哋咧明白到究竟發生緊咩事啊。咁同埋好多嘅資訊就唔會俾淨係左媒控制咯。咁就而家就其實呢個陳仁勳佢哋賣呢個晶片咧，跟住大家唔知嗰個晶片嗰樣嘢究竟係點咯？即係因為開始嗰陣時咧，應該大家都知道咧，係我哋唔可以賣晶片去大陸噶嘛，係犯法嘅嚇。咁制止嘅本來開始，但係之後咧，即係呢兩間公司 AMD 同咩講掂數咯，咁就容許可以賣呢個晶片啦。咁而家賣呢個晶片咧，就唔係賣最新嘅、最高、最先進嗰隻啦，叫做就係賣呢個最先進。而家我哋咧係 H100啦，大家有冇見到？咦？喺呢度我踎喺度啊！而家最先進咧就係 H100嘅，咁我哋賣俾佢嗰個咧都係 H20嘅，但係你睇下嗰啲速度啊！揾翻正啲位先得。咦？Robert， 係 Robert，how are you？ 咁我揾啲位，希望唔好遮到我自己睇嗰啲留言啦。咁佢會笑Robert，what's so funny Robert？ Oh I see， OK。Anyway， 咁咧就你睇下配備咧98，又俾夾住咗字 H 96個 GB， 哇！你睇下96個 GB， 咁咧嗰個記憶體喎，即係嗰嚿淨係記憶系統係96個 GB 啊，一嚿H 呢啲 HBM 又唔知咩嚟啦咁樣 ，anyway 啦。咁相比咧係就41% different 嘅，即係而家賣俾大陸嗰隻咧就冇我哋而家用緊嗰個 H100咁快同埋咁多容量嘅咁但係呢啲嘢好難講噶嘛，佢攞咗翻嚟咧，佢就識去拆噶啦，佢就識去會拆咗佢，跟住佢就會即係改唔改到咧？其實真係唔知咯。咁佢會借即係個 concept 咧，去將佢變個其實入邊都係啲好精密嘅 transistor 啫嘛。入邊如果識電腦嗰啲咧，就知道晶片其實咩咧？其實一大堆嘅 transistor 入邊 ，transistor 係咩咧？係好似咁樣嘅嘢嚟嘅咁樣嘅，跟住咧整多支筆先其實三角形嘅嘢嚟嘅啫你睇下先，係啦，其實係一個三角形嘅嘢嚟嘅啫只係咧，好似喺下邊啦，輸送入去啦，跟住輸送入去之後咧，佢就因為電腦都係0同1噶嘛，咁譬如話紅色呢邊係0，呢邊係1咁樣咯，咁一入支資料入去咁佢就會俾0或者1啦，咁0同1咁0同1咁樣一大堆咁形咗 binary 個 number 咁樣咯，咁電腦就係咁噶啦，其實就係過幾多 G 幾多 G 嘅 binary 喺入邊咁樣咯，就簡單咁講啦咁佢跟住喺入邊做運算啊咁樣咯，咁其實好多嘢嘅潛在好多風險喺入邊嘅。佢呢度都有呢個係 Grok， 我問 Grok 有冇風險㗎 ，Grok 都覺得有佢話 NVIDIA 咧將 H20定為中國生態系統關鍵產品近期訂單數十萬片但生產受到限制，因為出唔切同埋已經過氣啦嘛。我哋整呢批 20個批機器， 咁用到咁上下就唔準備再用，咁已經準備有紮係H18嘅機器出㗎嘛，佢啲全部都係機器做㗎，唔係人手做㗎嘛，冇可能人手做啊！你咁細塊嘢，跟住又有個即係咁多個，好似我頭先指嗰個 transistor 喺入邊咧幾細啊！我哋佢哋好似叫做 waffle 啊嚇，佢哋叫做 waffle，佢用啲電用啲 laser 咩嘢影印嗰啲，我都唔識啊，好深啊嚇！咁但係咧，佢哋就做，佢哋攞呢個 H28係嘛買咗好多咯，即係而家都未必攞到啦。咁 AMD 咧 ，AMD 其實咧好早以前咧，好早咧佢已經設咗廠喺大陸㗎，好多年前2000年嗰陣時已經有㗎啦，設咗廠大陸，跟住佢本來佢係想同 Intel 冚㗎嘛嚇，咁啊設廠翻大陸之後，所以有時咧佢哋以為人工平啊喺度慳啊，其實結果咧就拖慢咗 AMD 嘅發展啊。咁啊，結果 AMD 就唔能夠即係成功咁去冚贏 Intel 咯，或者冇 Intel 嗰種咁嘅科技。咁啊，可惜啦，佢自己攞嚟啦。咁啊，後尾佢就走咗去做graphic card 啊嗰啲咁嘅嘢啦嚇。咁咧，佢呢個又唔同嘅晶片個計算方法唔同嘅。咁咧，佢係而家咧大陸攞嗰隻咧係30，唔係我哋而家有嗰隻係308，大陸攞嗰隻咧係38，所以都係低嗰個 model 嚟嘅。咁低幾多咧？咁就攞咗，即係對嗰個拖慢中國起 AI 嘅程度有幾多咧？就係陣間我再一路落去，其實有埋分析嘅，好犀利嘅。而家我哋呢個 Grok， 所以我就AMD 已準備好在獲得美國批准後向中國出貨，預計可避免先前禁令導致7至8億嘅美元收入損失啦。咁而家佢賺翻就要俾翻15% 俾美國政府啦。咁如果頭先阿 Trump 嗰度有講嘅晶片入嚟美國，所有晶片入嚟美國就100%，好似100% 關稅嘅嚇。咁而家佢咁樣，跟住就喺嗰邊做嚇，佢賣去嗰邊。咁佢賣完過嗰邊，佢嗰啲如果有晶片，佢哋喺嗰邊裝嵌完再賣翻嚟，都係會貴嘅嚇。即係阿 Trump 而家就係用呢個關稅戰，仲爭2個 subscriber 啫，多謝大家。2 more subscriber, please subscribe。咁而家越嚟越多人做緊我而家做緊嘅嘢啊，所以咧好快就已經唔見人。嗰陣時啱開始佢幾多人啊？成萬嘅，而家走翻1000嘅啫嚇。咁同埋呢個嗰個方式又始終都係限制咗，俾外國人唔夠，即係我始終都係限制咗喺講廣東話咯。早嗰陣時有好多人都喺度叫我講翻英文嘅嚇。但係我想俾啲廣東話嘅人去聽去學呢啲嘢，俾佢哋知道。如果佢走去聽英文，可能佢又冇心機去聽。咁而家啦重點就係呢啲，重點就喺呢度啦。中共會否利用呢啲晶片對抗美國 AI 發展啊？呢個就係問題。跟住我問佢。問 Grok 話 yes 啊嚟幫手打落去先係嘛？等我打埋呢個先 Grok say yes C H20同大陸嗰隻係 MI308。 咁係會㗎，而家佢即係估都估到會啦，點會唔會啊？佢攞你啲平啲晶片，渣啲晶片，跟住去改裝改良啫嘛，所以佢哋唔係陣間再話俾你知，佢呢個咧，因為佢哋叫做軍民融合啊，佢哋其實美國佬知㗎，佢哋民嘅意思其實唔係真係人民啊，要搞清楚啊民嘅意思就係啲大公司咁解啊，即係國家同公司係融合㗎 ，OK？ 所以阿里巴巴嗰啲全部都係公司，即係佢話係公司，其實都係國家，其實都係共產黨啊！即係簡單講，所有嘢都係共產黨嘅喺大陸，就係咁簡單咯嚇。所以呢個就解釋咗咯。佢就話，如果阻止佢咧，就會估佢哋都會用走私方式咧去攞晶片，咁就會影響咗其實嗰個收入添咁樣咯。中國目標咧呢度講埋俾大家知，呢個中國目標係乜嘢啊？驚唔驚？問下大家，睇下你哋驚唔驚啊？中國嘅目標啊，係喺2030年啊，實現 AI 全球領導地位啊，得到國家巨額補貼同全球 AI 治理倡議啊，即係 AI，即係佢嗰個 AI，即係 DeepSeek 話事啊 ，OK？ 等政策支持啊！這些政策優先考慮自力更生，同時利用外國科技，儘管性能被降級啊，即係性能被降級咧，即係冇咁勁料啦，但係咧仍然足夠咧個運算能力嚟訓練先進模型啊！即係佢利用呢個 H20同 MI308就可以去計算佢點樣去整下一套晶片係勁過逼到美國。逼到 NVIDIA 嘅，所以 NVIDIA 好戇居嘅，即係同 AMD 啦，咁所以我個標題好似有寫嘅15% 太少啦，咁我解釋下點解會開始阿 Trump 同佢哋講係攞15%，因為其實阿 Trump 其實係想佢哋清咗啲貨嘅，但係清咗啲貨都唔麻煩啦，即係。而家 AMD 又眼紅 AMD 根本AMD 係 100% 親共嘅 ，OK？ 但係佢可能佢咧親共嗰隻得嚟咧就唔係親習近平嗰隻共嘅，但係就唔知咯，即係大陸始終喺個制度入邊，你好難你去分析話，哎呀佢係習派，佢係乜派物派嗰啲咧，乜派物派都好，都係 under 共產黨3隻字。咁而家因為係習近平領頭啊嘛，咁咪變咗好似係針對習近平咁咯。其實第二個咧一樣嘅啫。因為中共能夠將 AI 武器化，對民主規範構成威脅。呢個事實嚟㗎嘛，等我打返落去先 ，cut and paste 落去嚇，大家知道真係好牙煙㗎。跟住咧呢個就解釋到啦，軍民融合呢啲咧其實毓民都識㗎啦。如果其實叫毓民講仲好過我講，text 俾佢先，叫佢可唔可以有一集講下呢個世界一流，即係呢個成個解放軍。其實解放軍就係啲公司咯，係嘛？背後呢啲歷史發展啦嚇，因為毛澤東年代已經開始嘅，就唔係習近平嘅呢啲嘢。咁習近平咧有崇拜毛澤東㗎嘛，所以咧就會呢個方面咧會更加會發大咯。改革開放後咧，鄧小平提出軍民結合咯，寓軍於民咯，呢啲嚇，即係都係一套㗎啦，都係嗰路嘢。所以我話唔好理佢嚇係咪係乜派物派啊？共產黨就係共產黨㗎啦，唔會有好嘢㗎。佢唔會有一日咧真係個個咧言論自由啊嗰啲咁嘅嘢㗎啦，佢始終都係受佢控制嘅。 如果成個世界受佢控制，仲恐怖啦，係咪先？啊，而家都想話跨境捉個袁爸爸佢哋啦，係咪先？中國通過多項政策推動實施，如設立軍民融合發展委員會啊，即係好似我哋呢邊咧都有好多統促會啊，統一促進啊，促進統一會嗰啲咁嘅嘢咯嚇，即係佢哋都好多呢啲咁嘅會咯，一樣委員會咯 ，committee 好美國都好多嘅，美國都好多啲 committee 嘅啦嚇，軍民啊資源共享啊，講資源共享啫，又唔係你班大國，又係嗰班上面嗰間官傭，啲平民百姓係咪又係食自己啦嚇？呢啲全部都係最後都係貪腐嘅制，喺貪腐嘅方式去完成咗佢呢個任務嘅嚇，因為呢個就係共產黨本身個本質，佢係咁噶嘛，你冇得要求啊嚇。咁而家咧就呢個更即係沉重少少嘅題目啦，下一個就係好多人都而家喺度插緊批評啦，唔好用插啦，批評緊以色列對加沙嗰邊嘅行為啦。但係正式嚟講係發生緊咩事咧？咁好多謠言啦，謠言兩邊擺，咁都唔知邊個真邊個假。咁而家呢個叫內塔尼亞胡啊，嗱哈塔胡，即係以色列個總理咧就會再講嘢，開翻去，大家知道準備呢個題目嚇。以色列個總理咧就會講呢個對呢個叫咩啊？哈馬斯呢個點樣對付哈馬斯？咁哈馬斯而家做嗰啲好多嘢咧嚇。唔係好明個 question，唔係好明。咁啊，哈馬斯嗰個情況咧，其實好複雜喎，即係其實都好多問題啊。對嗰邊嗰個，我自己又唔係好熟嗰邊嘅形勢啦。但係我又覺得我始終都係要支持以色列㗎。點解咧？因為哈馬斯係恐怖組織嚟㗎嘛，恐怖組織就好似共產黨咁樣恐怖組織嚟嘅。咁呢個恐怖組織，佢哋係不擇手段，佢哋係可以去有人肉炸彈嗰啲㗎嘛，搞即係你話你可以搞人肉炸彈呢啲咁嘅組織啊，即係點可能認同佢？同埋10月20號嗰次去襲擊以色列咁樣拉晒啲平民，而家佢仲有好多人質喺佢哋手啊，咁樣去拉，即係咁樣去侵略以色列喎，咁都未討回公道。正式嚟講，你哈馬斯應該全部拉晒坐監咁咪冇咯，咁即係冇一個正式嘅公平公道出咗嚟咯。咁大家聽下佢講乜先啦。
Good afternoon. I'm glad you came here because I'd like to take the opportunity to puncture the lies and tell the truth. The truth is that Hamas still has thousands of armed terrorists in Gaza. It vows to repeat the savagery of the October 7th massacre and to do so again and again and again. It openly professes its goal to destroy the state of Israel. It subjugates Gazans. It steals their foods. It shoots them when they try to move to safe zones. And I think it's instructive that now many Gazans are fighting back. They're begging us, they're begging the world, free us, and free Gaza from Hamas. No nation can accept a genocidal terrorist organization, an organization committed to its annihilation, a stone's throw from its citizens. Our goal is not to occupy Gaza. Our goal is to free Gaza, free it from Hamas terrorists. The war can end tomorrow if Gaza, or rather if Hamas lays down its arms and releases all the remaining hostages. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will have overriding security responsibility. A security zone will be established on Gaza's border with Israel to prevent future terrorist incursions. A civilian administration will be established in Gaza that will seek to live in peace with Israel. That's our plan for the day after Hamas, and let me summarize it. 5 principles for concluding the war. 1, Hamas disarmed. 2nd, all hostages freed. 3rd, Gaza demilitarized. 4th, Israel has overriding security control. And 5, non-Israeli peaceful civilian administration. By that I mean a civilian administration that doesn't educate its children for terror, doesn't pay terrorists, and doesn't launch terrorist attacks against Israel. That's what we want to see in Gaza. So it's neither Hamas nor the PA. That's our plan. Given Hamas's refusal to lay down its arms, Israel has no choice but to finish the job and complete the defeat of Hamas. Now, we've done a great deal. We have about 70 to 75% of Gaza under Israeli control, military control. But we have 2 remaining strongholds, okay? These are Gaza City and the central camps in the Muasi. That's roughly, it's schematically presented here, but it's fairly accurate. Last Thursday, Israel's Security Cabinet, instructed the IDF to dismantle the 2 remaining Hamas strongholds in Gaza City and the central camps. Contrary to false claims, this is the best way to end the war and the best way to end it speedily. We will do so by first enabling the civilian population to safely leave the combat areas to designated safe zones. In these safe zones, they'll be given ample food, water, and medical care, as we've done before. And again, contrary to false claims, our policy throughout the war has been to prevent a humanitarian crisis, while Hamas's policy has been to create it. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has let in close to 2 million tons of aid. I know of no other army that has enabled such aid to go to the civilian population in enemy territory. Now, if we had a starvation policy, no one in Gaza would have survived after 2 years of war. But our policy has been the exact opposite. We let in, as I said, almost 2 million tons of aid and sent millions of text messages, millions of phone calls to Gazans to get out of harm's way. Yet in the last few months, Hamas has violently looted the aid trucks meant to get to Palestinian civilians. They deliberately created a shortage of supply. And the UN consistently refused, until recently, to distribute the thousands of trucks that we led into Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing. So our problem is we've had tons of uncollected food rotting on the Gazan side of the border because the UN was and still is unwilling to deliver all of it. Here are the tons and tons and tons of humanitarian aid that Israel led in to the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, just sitting there because it's not distributed. So now we're going to go around this obstacle. We are going around it by doing 3 things. 1, can I show this, please? Okay, designating safe corridors for humanitarian aid distribution. No, that's showing the problem, not showing the solution, but here it is. First, designating rather safe corridors for aid distribution. You can drive trucks there and you'll be safe. Second, increasing the number of safe distribution points managed by the Gazan humanitarian foundations. And 3, airdrops. That's airdrops done by the Israeli Air Force, and we're inviting others to join us. The result has been a humanitarian surge, which we're coordinating with President Trump and his team, and hundreds of trucks have gone in recent days. This is preventing hunger, but it's not prevented the global campaign of lies that we have all witnessed. So in Gaza, despite Hamas's obstacles, 2 million people are now getting access to humanitarian aid. But I'll tell you who isn't. The only ones that are being deliberately starved in Gaza are our hostages. This is Evyatar David. Look at his hand, at his arm. He's being deliberately starved by these Hamas monsters. And look at the Hamas captor. Look at the difference. He's eating, and he's eating well. The purpose of this news conference is to puncture the lies and spread the truth But that distortion has been propelled around the earth, almost the way that the Jewish people were maligned in the Middle Ages. Every massacre of the Jewish people was preceded by massive vilification. We were said to be spreading vermin to Christian societies. We were said to be poisoning the wells. We were said to slaughter Christian children for their blood. And as these lies spread around the globe, they were followed by horrific massacres, pogroms, displacements, finally culminating in the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust. Today, the Jewish state is being maligned in a similar way. Everything that I told you could be verified easily, but it hasn't. And the international press has bought hook, line, and sinker Hamas statistics, Hamas claims, Hamas forgeries, and Hamas photographs. For example, these 3 children. The first one is Osama al-Raqub. He is in Italy getting treatment because Israel got him out. That's what he looks like today. He has a genetic disease that damages the lungs and digestive system. It makes it hard to absorb nutrients and gain weight, okay? So Israel facilitated Osama's travel to Italy, where he got the medical aid that transformed his position. The second one is Abdul Qadir al-Fayumi. He suffers from a genetic neurological disorder, spinal muscular atrophy, a degenerative condition that causes muscle wasting, weakness, and severe weight loss unrelated to nutrition. This was the real cause of his frail appearance, not starvation. In fact, he was treated in Israel in 2018. Doesn't help because it's a congenital disease and it defies most treatment at least. The third one is the most celebrated one. This is a New York Times cover photo. It's on the front page of Muhammad Zakaria Ayub and his mother. Muhammad Zakaria Ayub is suffering from a genetic illness which you're familiar with. It's called cerebral palsy. His mother is well fed and his brother is healthy. I'm looking right now into the possibility of a governmental suit against the New York Times because this is outrageous. Of course, the correction was postage size. I don't know where it was buried. But this is outrageous. These are the 3 most celebrated photos, and they're all fake. It's the kind of malignant lies that were leveled at the Jewish people in the Middle Ages. We won't suffer. We won't allow it to go unchallenged, and this is the purpose of this press conference. I hope that you open your eyes to a simple fact. Hamas lies. Now you can ask me any question you want.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Could you give us, please, a timeline when you expect to conclude the new expansion of the new offensive? And if you can give us a few more details about how you're going to provide about this humanitarian surge and how GHF is going to be involved in this. Thank you.
Well, the timeline that we set for the action is fairly quickly. I mean, we want to, first of all, enable safe zones to be established, facilities to be brought to, so the civilian population in Gaza City can move out, as they moved out in Rafah, by the way. You remember in Rafah? There were 1.4 million people. People said they can't, they have nowhere to go and they're not going to move out. It took us, I think, about 8 days or 6 days to move them, and they all moved. There were practically no civilian casualties because they all left. And they went to the Moasi area that I showed you before on the map. We think we can achieve a similar result that safeguards the civilian population, at the same time enables us to go at the last stronghold, the most important stronghold of Hamas, which we haven't done so up to the war. I mean, we've been there, but we haven't taken it as a goal to dismantle the Hamas stronghold there. We do now. I don't want to talk about exact timetables, but we're talking in terms of fairly short timetable, because we want to bring the war to an end. This is how we bring the war to an end. As far as the surge is concerned, we're talking to the U.S. about additional measures, but we haven't waited. Because what we're doing, as I said, is designate safe corridors, allow and expand the GHF distribution points, and they're trying to bring in more resources, hope to recruit some international organizations, maybe, God willing, the UN, if they ever decide to actually do something for the Palestinian people that doesn't go through Hamas. And third, increase the airdrops. The airdrops are important, but they're not the most important thing. The most important thing is ground routes that bring aid, a surge of aid to the Palestinian population as far as we can without letting Hamas loot it.
Second question, yes.
Prime Minister, two questions. Firstly, why is Israel not allowing foreign journalists into Gaza to report independently? And secondly, President Trump has said there is real starvation in Gaza. Do you disagree?
Yeah, on the first question, in fact, we have decided, and I've ordered, directed the military to bring in foreign journalists, more foreign journalists, a lot. There's a problem of assuring security, but I think it can be done in a way that is responsible and careful to preserve your own safety. So the directive has been since, when is it? 2 days ago. From what you're telling me, it hasn't yet been implemented, but it should be, because I think you should see it. And one of the things you're going to see is precisely our efforts to bring in Gazans, to bring in rather food to Gaza. You'll see the trucks that have been entered Gaza and are still waiting to be distributed. You'll see Gazans who are fighting Hamas. You know, we haven't seen it since the beginning of the war. You know, and that's a reflection of the fact that they know that we're approaching the end stage. And these people are, you know, risking their lives and their families, but they say, we can't take it anymore, and they fight back. And the other thing you'll see is physical destruction. And the physical destruction is not because Israel is destroying structures with people in there. That's not what's happening. Israel, in fact, is clearing the population, as in Rafah. But the Hamas terrorists who may stay in those areas booby-trap just about every single building. Not every single building, but a lot of them. And every road, and every street, and every junction, every intersection. So one of the things that we do is we place basically old APC, armored personnel carriers, with tons of explosives, and we detonate them, and they set off all the booby traps. That's why you see the destruction. And we do similar things in the tunnels. The tunnels, these terror tunnels, we you know, put TNT in them, and we detonate that after people have left. But they're under buildings, so the buildings collapse. That's why you see destruction. You see destruction not because we go after civilian populated areas, but in fact areas that have been cleared of civilians and are still rife with terrorists. And that's how we've been able to reduce actually the civilian casualties and increase, of course, the terrorist casualties. I very much appreciate President Trump's support through this entire seven-front war, his magnificent cooperation in the battle to stop the existential threat from Iran, his support throughout, and his support now. He says two things. He says all 20 hostages have to be released, and he says Hamas should not be there. And I think that he, like me, he recognized the fact that there have been deprivations in Gaza caused by Hamas. Hamas has been the cause of that. And what we have to do is overcome it. So we're working together to overcome it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Is Israel working, proceeding in the belief, in the understanding that it can and will recover all 20 hostages alive militarily? Or is it proceeding in the belief or understanding that conditions of their captivity, Hamas strategy, will make that impossible?
Look, my goal is to get all of the 20 out alive, and also all the ones who are not alive. In the beginning of the war, we were told by a very senior commander, he said, look, we have to get used to the idea that we're not going to see even one of them alive. And I disagreed. I said, we'll get most and possibly all of them if we apply judiciously both military pressure and political, diplomatic pressure. So far, out of 255 hostages, we got 205 out, of which 148 are alive. 148 are alive. We have 20 living ones left in Hamas captivity. and 30 who are not alive, as I said before. If we don't do anything, we're not going to get them out. The option of just doing a war of attrition from defensive positions has not proved itself, and I think it will just, it won't get them out, but I think it will draw us into a protracted conflict that doesn't bring the war to an end. The move that I'm talking about, I think, has the possibility of getting them out. We're talking about how to, I don't want to go into details, but how to get the remaining hostages alive as we close in on Hamas. And there are various ways that I think, creative ways that this can be done, but again, I won't go into that now.
Thank you, Prime Minister. 2 questions, please. You've just shown the horrific photo of Eviatar David, who's kept hostage in Gaza. We know that the hostages' days are numbered. So how will prolonging the war bring them home? And second question, you stated that Gaza would be passed to civilian governance that is not Hamas and not the Palestinian Authority. Can you specifically identify who this civilian governance would be? Do you have any concrete entities or individuals in mind? And is there a timeline for establishing this administration?
Yeah, well, I don't want to prolong the war. I want to end the war. And I think the other suggestions would have prolonged it. We may have gotten maybe a dripping of hostages, even though Hamas showed no willingness to do that. And then they just go on and on and on, and we'd have this endless. Unless you are willing to just say, Israel, capitulate, go out. And even then, I don't think we'll get all the hostages. And if we capitulate, it means that Hamas will rearm, regroup, and carry out all the threats that it openly professes every day, by the way. Every day they say, we're going to do the October 7th massacre again and again, and we're going to destroy the state of Israel. You can't leave them there, So we're not going to do that. So my goal is not to prolong the war. My goal is to end the war. And I think that prolonging the war means that many of them could be starved to death. That's exactly the point. I don't want that. As far as the specific partners for the civil governance of Hamas, we're actually, I think the 5 principles are generally widely accepted. And it's instructive that some of the Arab countries, quite a few of them actually, said that Hamas has to be disarmed. I think this is the starting point. And look at what is happening in Lebanon as a result of our action. The Lebanese government, the new Lebanese government, is talking about disarming Hezbollah. Who would have believed it? Well, some of us did. I did. And that's changing the Middle East, as I promised to do on the second day of the war. I think in this case, if we succeed in this effort to basically end the war by defeating Hamas, its remaining strongholds, there are several candidates. There are several candidates that we're talking about, several constructs. And it's a transitional period. It's a transitional authority. It's going to be there because we don't want to, contrary to what I said, we want a security belt, but right next to our border. But we don't want to stay in Gaza. That's not our purpose. At least not my purpose. And I openly state, including to those who disagree with me. And there are some who do. But I think that our goal is to make sure that Hamas isn't there and that what replaces Hamas does not educate for terrorism, pay for terrorism, launch terrorism, but is willing to live in peace. There are candidates. I don't want to spoil the chances of succeeding here because I think they're real, but they're real providing we finish the job. See, no one's going to go in there if we don't finish the job. We can talk about the day after until eternity. No one's going to go in there unless we finish Hamas, and we're able to finish Hamas, and we will finish Hamas.
Yes, Welt TV Germany. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. So the German Chancellor has once again defended his decision not to send weapons to Israel, which can be used in Gaza. He said a friendship can and must withstand that. From your perspective, what has changed in this relationship?
Look, I respect Friedrich Merz. I think he's been a good friend of Israel, but I think he's buckled under. He's buckled under the pressure of false TV reports, the pressure, internal pressure from various groups. And I can say this, and I don't want to talk about him specifically, but I want to say this. look, maybe some choose to forget October 7th. We will not forget what happened. And we will do whatever it takes to defend our country and defend our people, defend our future. We will win the war, with or without the support of others. But I think that I think there's an issue here. And the issue is many leaders tell me, look, we know you're right, but we can't stand, in the face of the public opinion in our country, especially European leaders. They tell me that over and over again. And I say, that is your problem. It is not our problem. It is not our problem. You know? In Munich, everybody celebrated Munich. Everybody celebrated the capitulation in Munich, the Munich Peace Conference, peace in our time. Okay? And everybody lambasted Churchill who opposed it. So what? The difference now is maybe they thought then that there was a real chance for peace by succumbing to the Nazis. But I don't believe anybody seriously thinks that now. And we're facing neo-Nazis. You know, Chancellor Merz's predecessor was here, okay? And he, on the first or second day of the war, he was there, on the first days of the war. And he told me, he said to me, they're exactly like the Nazis. And they are. And we're not going to leave. We're not going to leave the Nazi, the remainder of the Nazi army, in the equivalent of Berlin. You know, don't go into Berlin and don't finish off the Nazi army, the German army. Of course not. I mean, that's what people are telling us to do. And I'm not going to do it. And the Israeli people are not going to do it. We're going to do it. And we have enough criticism within, but the majority of the people, if you really check it, the majority of the people say, that's a result we can't afford if we want to live here. So we're going to do what we need to do. And I hope that Chancellor Merz changes his policy. And you know when he'll change his policy, for sure? When we win.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You talked about the 7-front battle. There's an 8th front, the propaganda war, the information war. Is Israel winning or losing this war? And also, have you spoken with President Trump since the Security Cabinet approved this plan? If so, can you share some of the details of that conversation? If not, do you plan on speaking with him at some point soon? And is he planning to also come to Israel at some point?
Well, I suggest you ask him that. But I haven't spoken to him since next Thursday. Yes, I intend to speak to him very soon. You asked about, sorry, could you repeat the first part of your question?
The first part was about the propaganda.
Oh, the propaganda war? Well, look, no, I think that we've not been winning it, to put it mildly. I think there are vast forces that are arrayed against us. Among other things, the algorithms of the social network that are driving a lot of everything else, you know, and people who really know, and they're the foremost people in this field in the world, they're telling me that about 60% of the responses on the social media are bots. They can categorically say they're bots. And they're bots that, you know, especially in America, you know, they want to attack the support that Israel has from the Republican side. So they describe how, you know, themselves as homespun Southerners, except they're riding from Asia somewhere, you know. That's a big issue. We have to contend with it. And we also have to stand up and tell the truth, probably at greater frequency than we're doing now. That's exactly what I'm trying to do now. But again, if you want to win this war, end it speedily. End it speedily. Expose the lies as much as you can. End it speedily, and that's how you win the war. You win the war, the propaganda war, by winning the war and winning the peace. That's the simplest way to do it. And it's about time to do that.
Sky News, UK.
Next question, please.
Last question.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Given what the IPC says is the unfolding spectre of famine in the Gaza Strip, would you accept that your 11-week blockade, complete blockade on Gaza, played a role in that? And also, given the killings that we have seen at the GHF aid sites, how will you guarantee that that kind of disaster will not happen when you have 1 million more people displaced? Thank you.
Well, number one, the problem that we had was trying to stop stop Hamas looting. There's no question there was Hamas looting. Everybody saw it. You could see it. Hamas terrorists taking over trucks and so on. We try to do two things simultaneously. Stop the trucks and bring in the trucks through the GHF distribution points. Okay, it wasn't successful. And it wasn't successful, among other things, because Hamas interdicted also the GHF program, the distribution point. So Hamas created this problem, and it was directed against us. Immediately, we have a starvation policy, which is completely false, any more than we have a genocide policy, which is equally false. We don't. Not this, not that. I don't know of a country that texts millions of messages to civilians to get out of harm's way, giving up the element of surprise, or calling them individually on cell phones. Yet Israel is accused of genocide. It's absurd. Or starvation policy. But there was a problem of deprivation, no question about it. And so we had to solve it. And the way we solve it is the way I described it to you. And there are now not 0 trucks, but at least in, I think last time I checked, hundreds of trucks that went into Gaza. That's alleviating the situation. Now we want to increase the number of distribution sites. So there's not, basically you answer this problem, or you solve this problem by the law of supply and demand. If you have a lot of supply, if you flood Gaza with food, which some of it will be pilfered, there's no way to get around that, will be looted by Hamas, but you'll have, if enough food reaches the marketplace, so to speak, then you'll see a difference. And you know what the difference is? How do we know for sure there's a difference? Because we monitor, as any one of you could, the price of food in Gaza. It's plummeted. It's plummeted ever since that we decided to take to do the humanitarian surge. And it'll plummet more if other countries join us. So I called on other countries to join in the airdrops. I actually called them to help persuade the UN to move those trucks. Because every truck that goes in brings down the price of food. That's what happens. And when you have no shortage like that, then you don't have also the crowding around distribution points. And by the way, a lot of the firing was done by Hamas, seeking to have response by our forces, and very often they didn't. They held back. They stayed their fire, even though their own lives were on the line. Yeah.
We're done. Thank you, Prime Minister.
We're done? Well, I couldn't resist that one. Who?
Matthew Doran from ABC Australia.
Oh, okay.
Matthew Doran from ABC Australia. You've
Yeah.
seen countries such as the UK, Canada, France say that they will support Palestinian statehood in the next short while. You've described that as a reward for Hamas here. Other countries like Australia are also walking down this path, not quite there yet. How much of this is a reward for Hamas, and how much of it is actually countries like those who have repeatedly said Israel does have a right to defend itself, but are now struggling to stomach what they're seeing you and your military doing in Gaza?
Well, first of all, those who say that Israel has a right to defend itself are also saying, but don't exercise that right. When we do what any country would do faced with this genocidal terrorist organization that has performed the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, I think we're actually applying force judiciously, and they know it. They know what they would do if right next to Melbourne or right next to Sydney you had this horrific attacks. I think you would do it, at least what we're doing, probably maybe not as efficiently and as precisely as we're doing it. We've lost quite a few soldiers in that effort. But that's the first thing. I think that the second thing you ask is Palestinian state. Well, the assumption, the prevailing assumption in this is that the problem that we have with the Palestinians is the absence of a Palestinian state. And if they were given a Palestinian state, they would stop the efforts to destroy the Jewish state. But the Palestinians were offered a state many times, including in the partition resolution, and they turned it down. They were offered statehood by my predecessors with lavish concessions. They turned it down. Because the Palestinians are not about creating a state, they're about destroying a state. That's why they opposed the Jewish national movement to create a state called Zionism. They opposed it before the inception of the Jewish state, and they've opposed it since. They've opposed it when they had the Judean Samaria, the West Bank, and Gaza in their hold. They didn't say, let's create a state there. They didn't say that. Because again, their goal is the destruction of a state. It defies imagination or understanding how intelligent people around the world, okay, including seasoned diplomats, government leaders, and respected journalists, fall for this absurdity. It's so easy to verify, you know. And look at the PA, okay? Look at the Palestinian National Movement today is divided, okay? Divided between two forces, okay? The Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria and Hamas in Gaza, okay? Hamas in Gaza had a de facto state. It had a state. And it used it to launch a war of terror against Israel because their doctrine is that the destruction of Israel should proceed with forceful and direct military and terrorist moves. That's what they did on October 7th. And that's what they'll do again if we don't destroy them. The Palestinian Authority, on the other hand, says no. First, Israel has to be reduced to indefensible boundaries. You've got to get them out with the ICC, with the UN, with the Security Council resolutions, drive them to indefensible boundaries, and then deliver the blow, because Israel is too strong in its present configuration. These discussions are open, they're held. Anybody, you don't need Israeli intel for it, believe it, okay? You can just scour the web, you'll find it, okay? So they have no difference about the goal. That's why the Palestinian children in Judea and Samaria and the Palestinian children, that is the Palestinian children under the PA and the Palestinian children under Hamas, are educated with exactly the same textbooks. That's why the PA calls its public squares against mass killers of Jews. That's why they have pay for slay. The more Jews you murder, the more you get paid, or your family gets paid. I mean, so that's the crux of the problem. The real reason that this conflict persists is not because of the absence of a Palestinian state, but the persistent Palestinian refusal to recognize a Jewish state in any boundary, okay? Now, when you give them a Palestinian state, when they haven't abandoned the goal of destroying the Jewish state, all you're doing is you're bringing the next war closer. Again, Hamas had a state. You just brought the war closer. And if you did the same thing in Judea and Samaria, right above Tel Aviv, enveloping Jerusalem, some say cutting Jerusalem into two, that's all that's going to happen. You're going to have the radicals again take it over, Iran take it over, and start a state from improved boundaries, start a war with improved boundaries. That's not going to happen. I think the solution to this problem is that the Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves in the places where they live and none of the powers to threaten Israel. They should obviously reform their whole education system. They should reform their whole historical outlook and say, all right, you know, we accept that Israel is here to stay, not as a fact, as a physical or geographic fact, but as a fact of historical equity. You know, if they want to live here next to us, they have to stop seeking our destruction. And to give them an independent state with all the trimmings, okay, is to invite a future war and a certain war. And that's something that today the Israeli public forcefully opposes. Before the war, by the way, it was about, you know, third, two-thirds in the overall population. Probably 60-40, or even more, sorry, in the Jewish population. But now it's changed more dramatically. I mean, we had a vote in the Knesset a few months ago about the possibility of, you know, having a Palestinian state. And the result was 99-9. 99-9. And that covers a very broad spectrum. And today, most of the Jewish public is against the Palestinian state for the simple reason that they know it won't bring peace, it'll bring war. To have European countries and Australia march into that, rabbit hole, just like that, fall right into it, and buy this canard is disappointing, and I think it's actually shameful. But it's not going to change our position. Again, we will not commit national suicide to get a good op-ed for 2 minutes. We won't do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
哇，好悶啊，係嘛？大家啊，好悶，因為咧係好多問題佢要解答，其實好跟住睇留言嗰度，你就知有啲人咧唔係好 make sense 啊，make sure 我啲聲唔係好似我琴日咁咧，陣間又冇咗聲嚇。佢琴日咁嘅講完咗之後咧，就一路自己冇聲嚇。哇！原來 delay 咁耐啊！原來 delay 咁耐我都唔知道嚇，定係我撳咗？哦，OK，哦，撳咗掣。誒，多謝大家，仲爭一個就有1000啦。一到1000咧，我就可以俾個驚喜俾大家啦。咁頭先咧，你一路睇，你又可以見到好多留言啦，同埋嗰個最終咧嗰個投票咧都係差唔多50-50，都唔係好多人想哈馬斯死嘅，我都唔係好明啦咁。咁佢認為咧，好多人都真係唔知道咧，哈馬斯一個恐怖組織係點嘅樣啊嚇，即係個個就係以為啊，因為以色列即係嗰種咧因為以色列強大因為佢係強大，咁哈馬斯佢嗰個巴勒斯坦係弱者啊咁樣。再睇 PragerU 其實已經有教過點解而家中東巴勒斯坦同以色列嗰個情況係點㗎。但係好多時我哋都要重複咯，我都有時好厭咯，就自己又唔係嗰度人。咁啊，冇可能一定重複又重複噶嘛。咁啲人應該要去睇下 PragerU 知道咗啊。咁啊，頭先有條友叫咩睇 Nick 咁啊，睇我不如我打翻落去。PragerU 啦。PragerU 佢有好多條片，佢都有解釋到嗰陣時點解巴勒斯坦啊，點解以色列啊，同埋咧巴勒斯坦喺耶穌年代，我有一集講過㗎，唔知大家記唔記，即係有冇睇到啦？我有集講過喺耶穌即係之後啦，耶穌即係都喺第1世紀，有一班人咧就想反羅馬政府。咁羅馬政府梗係唔俾佢反到啦！嗰陣時羅馬咁勁，你班猶太人想反，咁嘅結果咧，羅馬政府就將一個城本來叫做猶大城嘅，就改名而家都唔記得叫咩名啦！而家做完個功課都唔記得咗啦嚇，做完之後，總之乜敍利亞巴勒斯坦城就改咗個猶大城，就改咗個名叫做敍利亞巴勒斯坦城就咁樣開始嘅個巴勒斯坦個名跟住一路就即係一路落啦。好多人咧一講回教，一講猶太教，又拉到去亞伯拉罕嗰個古仔嗰度嘅呢個係傳統落嚟嘅一個古仔，係唔係真係個古仔？我嗰陣細個聽伊朗伊拉克兩兄弟兩個都係由俾隻狼養大㗎，呢啲神話故事嚟嘅嘛，大佬請大家繼續幫手如果可以 share 去你啲 group 度咧，因為而家仲有先10點咋，時間上咗，平時做到成12點係嘛？ 咁而家好想啊，點解咁難過嘅今日啊？我咁難過1000嘅啊，想俾大家啲驚喜都咁難啊，係嘛？Hello，留言你哋要留言點，即係留下言啊！仲有我教埋大家點樣點讚，唔使好簡，唔係好難嘅，因為而家有啲手機版啊，tap 個手機就得㗎啦，你就可以咧。應該早嗰陣時多人嗰陣時，我就應該教呢樣嘢，等個個咧可以嚟 tap 啊！而家走晒你已經嚇。下次啦繼續努力Hello 你好，請幫手訂閱我嘅頻道，多謝你嘅支持。即係好，而家頭先個 po 出咗嚟啦，51%咧就贊成剷除哈馬斯嘅，咁樣都有40，即係51對49咯，但係得37個 vote 咯，咁即係。都係5波啦，偏 yes 曾經試過偏 no 嘅添咁即係我即係當然啦，我呢啲梗係唔係好準確嘅調查啦，37個 vote 啫嘛，係咪？咁點可能咧？我啲又唔係好多觀眾群，如果多觀眾群啊，係咪？而家得翻10個人喺度睇嘅，咁或者咧，我再播翻咧，琴日咧，反正仲有時間，就講翻佢。等我一陣啊，點解會等我揾翻？因為咧，你睇下我呢個標題咧，其實就係、神愛我哋嘅心咧，就喺呢度顯明咗。約翰福音3章16就係講到神愛世人，將他的獨生子賜給我哋使我哋不至滅亡，反得永生咁啊嘛。但係點樣賜給我哋啊？呢個咧就我想講嘅重點佢點樣賜法？我即係好多時，我哋一路咧都係俾嗰啲影片咧，就係俾啲古仔啦，叫做同埋或者傳統即係要好小心啲傳統傳統多數都有危機嘅。跟住傳統入邊咧就講耶穌呢個，好多時都會講呢個釘痕。原來仲犀利過釘痕，就係佢嘅鞭痕。耶穌係受咗700幾鞭啊！同埋嗰啲鞭咧，唔係普通我哋所能承受嗰啲鞭啊，唔係一條咁啊，唔係即係唔係藤條啊，叮當，唔係藤條嗰啲鞭啊，係啲鞭咧有啲即係刮㗎，700幾啊，仲要打盲咗隻眼㗎，即係呢啲咧Hello 你好，歡迎留言點讚。而家我想講嘅一個題目咧，就係我要揾翻，我唔想，因為咧成條琴日嗰套戲咧就用咗成個半鐘頭嘅咁我就想用少少時間補充翻，即係講到OK 呢度開始，即係睇到耶穌嗰個。想俾大家睇嘢，即係嗰個殘忍啊！我再前少少，呢度開始。再前我已經攞咗出嚟啦，呢度已經呢度已經攞咗出嚟啦。呢度開始呢度開始講邊啦。差唔多呢度開始大家仲有時間嘅話咧，就喺度 再睇多次。因為琴日如果你冇睇，你今日可以睇多次咯。睇啲聲得唔得先？一個
overlooked, understated passages in all the Bible, and Pilate had Jesus flogged. And if we read that too quickly, we just don't understand the impact of it. And that's why I've brought these artifacts for you. I want you to, this is a flagrum that we had commissioned. I want you to hold this, Tucker, and I want you to get it in your hand.
It's a flagrum.
This is a flagrum.
Okay, so this is a wooden dowel with 3 rawhide lines coming off it and lead balls on the end.
Right. And I have 2 of them because we know from the crucified man that there were 2 torturers. So Jesus is being whipped simultaneously by 2 different executioners.
So the purpose of the lead balls on the end of the rawhide is
to inflict as much torment as possible. And so sometimes you would have flagrums with bone ends, but there are all these barbell shapes on the hash marks of the crucified man, which leads me to believe that it was used in something just like this. So this is, again, a 1-to-1 flagrum that the Romans would use.
So if you hit someone with a length of rawhide and a piece of lead balls at the end, I mean, you kill someone with that.
Right. And this is where Jesus loses 1/3 of his blood volume. And I want you to understand something for the benefit of our audience. Notice how short this is. I mean, this is not like an Indiana Jones whip, right? I mean, there was a demonic intimacy to this torment. And the blood of Jesus would have been splattered all over the executioners. And so they flogged Jesus. There are 200 wounds on the dorsal, on the back image. So if we took time right now to count them up, there's over 200 on the back. There's 172 on the front. There is not an area of Jesus's body that has not been tortured, including the pelvic region. We do
they
not
hit him
have,
in the crotch with this?
Again and again.
With lead tips.
Lead tips. And not
you
only
just
that.
take the skin right off a man's body with that.
And actually, according to the hematological reports, we think his right eye was blinded. So there's not only, we'll get to the crown of thorns here shortly, so hold your breath for that one. But there's his right eye, there are wounds consistent with flagellation. So we don't know if the guys were drunk or if they were just going to town on him, but they whip him. And at some point, the scourge hits him probably from the back of the head in the eye right here and likely blinds him in the right eye, because his right eye is severely punctured in the image of the crucified man. And also his left cheek, probably from the rod beating at Caiaphas' home, is also hugely, I mean, it's like he's been in a heavyweight boxing match. I mean, he can't see out of his right eye. His left cheek is raised. And so this is the flagrum.
So this was before he was sentenced to crucifixion, before he was sentenced to death.
Pilate, again, he brings Jesus after, and again, so 372 wounds that we count, but again, we don't have the lateral side. So again, I want to reiterate, there's probably 700 wounds on his body if you count them up, and if you
couldn't survive that long term, right?
And this is where Pilate then fashions a crown of thorns, and he places it on Jesus, his head, and let me set these so we can make some room.
So that's the halo of thorns.
No, actually not. Let me show you. I thought it was a halo because you and I, we've both been so influenced by early Christian art and specifically medieval art, but this is what took my breath away. And I want you to be careful with this because these are Bethlehem thorns. This is the crown of thorns. This is the helmet of thorns. This was not a wreath, Tucker. This was not like a sweatband you wore around your forehead. They fashioned this diabolical crown of thorns, these Bethlehem thorns, that when they dry, they're as sharp as nails. You can feel that. I mean, it pricks your finger right to the touch. And they ram this on Jesus's head. And I want you to let this set in because there's 50 puncture wounds on the head, both the forehead, the top, and the back of the head of the crucified man of the shroud. 50 puncture marks. And so you can imagine.
And that's all detectable on the shroud?
Right on the shroud. You can see the back of the head, all of the blood pooling in the back of the head from this crown of thorns being rammed on his head. So Jesus has 700 scourge marks, and then they slam this on his head. And this is where Pilate brings Jesus before the Jewish mob. And this is where we hear in the Latin, ecce homo, behold the man, Pilate says. And he's bloodied. How does he even stand? We don't know. His love compelled him to stay standing on our behalf. And this is the point. Imagine seeing a man in this state. He will very quickly be dead. And it's not enough for the crowd. They begin to yell, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him.
Demons.
And this is where Pilate says,
I should also note, as a historical fact, he never did anything wrong. Like, he was never even accused. He was never accused of hurting anybody.
Remember, all of the false witnesses came forward when Jesus is in this dummy trial at Caiaphas' home, and they say, well, he's a bastard. Remember, Jesus is accused of being an illegitimate child. He's accused of blaspheming, of casting out demons by Beelzebub, by the worker, by the prince of demons. All of these false accusations are brought against him, and Jesus doesn't open his mouth.
But just to be clear, even if the false accusations were real accusations, if they were true, he's still never accused of hurting anyone.
Right. He committed
in any
no
way.
sin. No sin was
But he's not
found
even
in him.
accused of it.
Right.
So, right. So just to put it in context, so it's not, they didn't even claim like he killed a man in Reno, shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. There's nothing like that at all.
No.
Or he cheated people out of money, or he, kicked out the money changers and stole the money.
Exactly.
Nothing like that at all.
Right. This was diabolical in every sense of the word, as you rightly point out. And this crown of thorns, the first time I saw it was in Jerusalem. And Tucker, it took my breath away. It still takes my breath away.
So the reason that you've revised, or you're going with the modern revision to the common halo of thorns, is based on
the shroud,
the blood record right there.
Absolutely. The punctures, the wounds, basically the pathology of his head and his face and the back of his head. And this is what you asked, how do we know this is Jesus? Well, the helmet of thorns leaves it beyond all doubt in my mind. I believe this is a slam dunk case that the crucified man is the historical Jesus, without a doubt, based on the evidence.
If you were to recreate, if you were to take the gospel accounts and Josephus and the 21 total accounts of Jesus' crucifixion, which I think is accepted by everyone, atheist and Christian alike, as a historical fact.
Right.
If you were to take all those facts from the record and try and create an image of them, could you create this?
No. That's the fascinating thing. The best scientists in the world cannot explain how there's an image there, and they cannot replicate it.
And it couldn't be replicated now.
No. Even with our best technologies today, it can't be replicated in any way.
So this brings us to, I think, one of the central questions, which is the provenance of this. Where did it come from? What do we know?
That's the fascinating thing
about where this has been for the last 2,000 years.
Well, it turns out there's a scientist, a criminologist by the name of Max Frey, who was involved in the Nuremberg trials, a very respected criminologist. He spent 5 years of his life. Again, this is where I say 102 academic disciplines. These are men and women who risked their academic reputation. And again, why I'm so grateful you're bringing this to light today on your program. Max Frey, who's now dead, spends 5 years of his life studying the pollen spores on the shroud.
What's a pollen spore?
Pollen. Well, I have it on me from this beautiful state we're in right now.
Yeah.
From traveling here and all of the allergies here right now.
Yeah.
But there are 56 different specimens of pollen that Max Frey detects.
From plants.
From plant life, botany. And what's amazing about it, again, if we're making this up or trying to hoax this, we would not have known this 700 years ago in medieval Europe.
Right.
There are certain pollen flower plants that bloom only in springtime, where in the land of Israel, where more specifically in Jerusalem, and that pollen is on the shroud. So you have pollen flowers that only bloom in April in the land of Israel, and that pollen signature, according to Max Frey, that pollen species, we have 56 of them, is embedded in the shroud chemically. What's fascinating is we don't just have pollen from the land of Israel. We have pollen that traces the provenance of the shroud from Jerusalem, AD 30, to Edessa, which is far eastern Turkey, where it's there for 900 years. And then we have pollen from Constantinople.
The Eastern Roman Empire.
Right. Constantinople. And again, the shroud is constantly escaping the caliphates of the time. So it goes from Constantinople in around 1200 through Athens, finally up to Liry, France, with a knight, Geoffrey de Charnay, who he never says how he got it, but he has it. And then ultimately he sells it for 2 castles to the Savoy family of France. And then it's moved to Chambéry, France, and it's under the House of Savoy. And then it becomes very political because the Savoys then relocate their kingdom to Turin, Italy, and to solidify their political rule, they make sure they bring the shroud with them in the 16th century to Turin, Italy, where it's
where, as a matter of written record,
yeah, great question.
Leaving aside the modern chemical analysis of the shroud, how far can we trace it back so we know it was
we
where
can
when?
Trace it first, of course, as I already mentioned, the shroud is mentioned in all 4 Gospels. And then we have Eusebius, who's the most respected church historian. He's at the Council of Nicaea in 325, talking about the face cloth, the image cloth of Jesus. He's the one who gives us the story of the shroud going from the land of Israel to King Abgar, who's the king of Edessa, where it stays for 900 years.
And we know it was there.
Right.
Okay, so...
And it's known by different names, though. This is the thing that I want to say. I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. Kansas City Chiefs were not always the Chiefs. They were the Dallas Texans before they moved to Kansas City. It's very similar with the shroud. It's known by different names.
But it's the same object.
Yeah, the Mandilion, the image of Edessa, the face cloth. And as we continue to red pill ourselves with this, Tucker, you have the pollen that matches it. You have the textual records that match it. Eusebius. We have these other wonderful early Christian historians who are talking about this face cloth.
When's the first written reference to it?
Uda Eusebius, the great church historian, early 4th century.
Early 300s.
Right. 325 AD is Council of Nicaea, so it antedate that. So early 300s.
Okay, so...
And he's bishop of Eusebius. And keep in mind, what is Eusebius?
Wait, but hold on. But just so as a... Okay, so we know this has existed for at least 1,800 years.
Exactly.
So
the
that's
written record.
The written record shows it. So that's kind of not in dispute.
Right.
So if this were a forgery, it would have to have been a forgery at least as early as the 4th century, the 300s.
Exactly.
And... So that right there kind of tells you, like, if modern science can't replicate this, probably not possible in 20 AD.
Right. Incredibly not.
Okay, so I didn't know that.
No, nobody does. And because
I was told by Reader's Digest in the 70s. No, I'm serious. I first...
Yeah.
Strange Stories and Amazing Facts. It was a Reader's Digest book that I read in 1980 in summer camp, and I read about this, and I'm like, this is an amazing thing, and photographic negative, but we know it's a product of the Renaissance or the late Middle Ages.
False.
But there was already a written record of it going back to the
greatest
4th century.
historian of the early church, Eusebius, who I was going to mention it. He's in Caesarea. He has a library. We don't know the sources he had, but he had an incredible library.
Yeah.
So he's standing on the shoulders of historians before him. And so this is a long-standing historical tradition in the church. One of the things that's interesting to me, and one of the things I had to get over as I began studying the shroud, Tucker, is I thought it was a Catholic relic. Now, we need to, again, I want to just hammer on this because you have a lot of Protestants that watch your program and a lot of Christians who think, oh, that's just a Catholic relic. I'm not interested in the Catholic Church, therefore I'm not interested in the shroud. The Catholic Church did not take control of the Shroud of Turin until 1983. 2 years of probate court. The last king of Savoy bequeaths the shroud to the current pope, who was Pope John Paul II at the time. And after 2 years of probate court, finally, the Catholic Church becomes the custodian of the shroud in the 1980s. So it was
in private hands.
Family
So
hands.
you said it was in eastern Turkey for 900 years. Where?
In Edessa, which is eastern Turkey. It was a stronghold of the Christian movement as it was, escaping then when the Muslim invasion started, and again, the 7th century, it escapes to Constantinople and then Athens, and then beyond that, as I mentioned.
It keeps moving west.
Right, exactly.
As the Ottoman Empire rises.
Totally.
And Islam sweeps over the land of the Bible.
Remember, Islam killed the bishops, the Bibles, and the buildings.
Yeah.
And so it's escaping that. So it's amazing the embarrassment of riches we have from an artifactual standpoint. And then when you actually look, too, there's something else we haven't touched on. The iconography, the early Christian art, Tucker, I mean, is remarkable. On my social media, we created a AI image, my friend Doug Powell and me. Doug gets all the credit. He's an amazing artist. He imported the information of the face of the crucified man and compares it with the icon Pantocrator, Lord over all, which is currently at St. Catherine's Monastery, where it's been since the 6th century. This is an icon of Jesus. It's famous. When he put those two images, the face of Jesus in the shroud and the icon Pantocrator in Sinai, he put that into Midjourney and created an AI rendering of what Jesus would have looked like. It is so moving. It's powerful to look at.
It's interesting, the face of Jesus on the shroud before us, even at this distance, it's recognizable as the Jesus from antiquity, from the artistic representations of Jesus all the way up until George Floyd became Jesus in 2020.
Yeah, not the gay-looking Jesus of the medieval era.
Yeah, no.
And I really mean that. If you look at Jesus depictions in the medieval era, it's a very effeminate Jesus, no facial hair, weak, small, a white Jesus. That's not what we have reflected. So again, if we were a hoaxer in the medieval era, we would have created the Jesus of our time, which is this effeminate Jesus. No, what do we have in here? We have a man's man, a long-haired man, a man, we know Jesus walked 20,000 miles in his ministry. If you just add up his trips to Jerusalem and his public ministry, Jesus being about 30, according to Luke's gospel, when he begins his ministry, Jesus was walking all the time. There was no Ubers or rideshare apps. He was pound for pound a strong man, a physically fit man. And that's why he could probably take the brutality that he endured as well.
That's just so interesting, though. But the face is distinctive, and the face is reflected through Christian art going back a long way. Like, if you just showed me that face, I'd say, oh, that's Jesus' face.
Exactly.
So the question always was like, well, how do we know what Jesus looks like? And this is the
shroud.
answer.
Yeah, and so all the icons, what we call them, is all the iconography, all the icons of Jesus, there's over 200 of them, they seem to have the same source material. And when you compare it to the shroud, it's like they all trace the face of Jesus off the man of the shroud.
That's wild.
And not only that, you have the numismatics. This is the study of coinage from the ancient times. And you have all these Byzantine coins that look just like the image of the face of the man of the shroud.
Yes.
So, like, what are all these people looking at if the shroud was invented, like the liberal scientists want us to believe, and the liberal Bible scholars who are apostate, in the 14th century?
So that's the claim.
The claim is based on one fact, the carbon dating of 1988 that you brought up. 1260 to 1390 is what they wrote on the chalkboard in October of 1988, that the carbon dating said.
So let's get into that in some detail, if you don't mind.
I would love to.
So everybody remember, I guess I misremembered. I was told it was probably fake in 1980, but you're saying it was not till 1988.
October 88.
October 88, there was a radiocarbon dating of the shroud itself.
Right.
Before you debunk it, if you wouldn't mind just explaining who did that.
Right. So the agreement was, again, the Catholic Church did not take control of the shroud until the mid-'80s. First, if you don't mind, could I just back up to 1978, Tucker, to the original scientific research? So, this is amazing, which I'm glad we have this time. In 1976, and I'll get to it, I want to set the context. 2 Air Force Academy professors, Eric Jumper and John Jackson, use a machine that was developed to study the effects of the nuclear bomb called a VP8 image analyzer. It's a brightness map. And they would use that to scan the impact of the nuclear bomb. So that's what the machine is. These are not pastors. These are not theologians. These are professors at the Air Force Academy. They get an image of the Shroud of Turin, likely the Henri 1930s image that C.S. Lewis had in his bedroom, and they put it through the VP8 image analyzer. And they realize there are 3D information encoded in the Shroud of Turin. No other picture does that. I want to make sure this sets in. There's 3D information. There's like a holographic topography brightness map of the man of the shroud. that looks like you're looking at the surface, geography, topography of land.
There's like depth.
There is depth. There's 3D. The way they said it, analytically, there's 3D information encoded in the image of the crucified man. And when they put pictures of their grandchildren through it, it was just smeared 2D images. So no other image does this. So that VP8 image analyzer, you can go on YouTube and watch it done, is what gave rise to what's called the Shroud of Turin Research Project, the scientific STIRP team, which consists of 33 scientists, 26 who went to Turin, Italy. They had 5 days. They had 120 hours to study the shroud. Keep in mind, the Savoy family allowed this, not the Catholic Church. This is controversial, but I don't believe the Catholic Church would have ever allowed the Shroud of Turin to be researched. And that's not my saying. That's Barry Schwartz, who was the documenting photographer who photographed the shroud in 1978. It was the private family, the Savoys, the House of Savoy, who allowed this research team, 33 scientists, to study the shroud for 5 days. Okay, so they took 4 years. They didn't go on Twitter, didn't exist. They didn't go on social media, didn't exist. They took 4 years to publish all of their findings. And I haven't used this word yet until this point in our interview. The STIRP team, these 33 scientists, by the way, Roy Rogers says, give me 15 minutes in the scientific method and I'll prove it's a hoax. He wasn't saying that after 15 minutes of studying the shroud. They all thought they had a free trip to Italy. They were in the lobby, Barry Schwartz, one of the original STIRP teams, and I met many of them. Sadly, many of them are now dead. But they're meeting over drinks in the lobby of the Italy Hotel in Turin, which is a beautiful city to visit. And they're all joking that they have a free trip to Italy to debunk this hoax. No one was saying that a few days later. So these 33 scientists publish, and they prove, this is the word I'm going to use, it's proven. The shroud is not a work of art. It is not a man-made image. They can't tell you how it's made, but they proved there's no pigment, there's no dye, there's no paint. They cannot explain how the image is there, but it is not man-made. So for the Christians out there or religiously minded people who think that like we're violating the second commandment right now, looking at this, we're not violating the second commandment, Tucker, so we can be at ease.
What's the second commandment?
Is you shall not worship a graven image. A graven image is by definition a man-made object, a handmade object. The shroud is not man-made. It's otherworldly. So we're not violating the second commandment. So that allows people
and what's
to breathe
otherworldly
easier.
about it? The 3D.
That the image, here's the cool part about the shroud. I believe we're looking at the moment of Jesus's resurrection, ultimately. All of this conversation leads that something powerful happens on that first Easter morning. It's electromagnetic radiation that's so powerful. We don't have this amount of watt power on Earth. 40 billion, literally 40 billion watts of energy, but it happens, it's peak power. It's not like the power when you flip on, it took me a while to learn this. It's almost like a cold energy because it happens so quickly in a twinkling of an eye.
It doesn't evaporate.
It doesn't
the linen.
squirt. That's what the labs could heat up and essentially tattoo the shroud, but it would burn up instantly. It would scorch. This didn't scorch. It was the pulse rate, which was so, and I know we're getting deep, but it's important to be nuanced in this conversation and precise. The pulse rate power, 40,000 billion watts traveling at 1/40th of a billionth of a second, we believe is that moment that Jesus' body is resurrected. And that's what leaves this image.
But whatever it was a process that
chemically changed the fibrils at a 0.2 depth, which is surface level, to leave this image.
And that cannot, just for the fifth time, that cannot be applied with a brush.
No, it can't be duplicated. And it hasn't been. One man in Britain offered £1 million to anyone who could replicate the shroud, and no one's taken him up on the offer.
So if we have a written record of the shroud going back to the 4th century, how were scientists allowed to say that it, I mean, if we know it existed because contemporaneous sources described it, then how are they allowed to say it was a Renaissance creation?
Well, how are they allowed to say anything that's unfactual? They're liars. And they hate truth and they hate God.
Well, yeah, I'm aware of that. But like just on logic grounds, how could, I don't know, did anybody say, well, wait a second, we've been, someone in the 320s wrote about this.
Right. Well, they don't know that, honestly. The scientists, they don't read these truths. They don't read Christian history. Most media people have never read the Bible. They don't even know
but
what
if
you're
they're
talking
studying
about.
the Shroud of Turin, you'd think they would have some grounding in the Shroud of Turin.
Right,
But okay.
exactly. No.
So they do radiocarbon dating. This was the headline from '88, I guess.
Right. That it's so thank you. So that was the scientific launch to the. So then in the late '80s, thank you for bringing me back. It's agreed upon that 7 laboratories would do blind research, carbon dating of the shroud. And the scientists who studied it said, whatever you do, don't take the sample from the fringes because the shroud has been repaired. There's 2 things we're looking at, Tucker, that it took me a minute to learn all this. There's these those lines, those are burn marks, those are scorch marks. These 16 triangular shapes, those are patches. The shroud survives a fire in 1532. The nuns stitched it up with a backing cloth. And they also, many believe...
Where was the fire?
This was in Chambéry, France, 1532, before it moves to Turin in 1578. So it survives this fire. It's doused. The shroud has survived at least 3 fires, and so there are also water stains. You can see those watermarks as well on the shroud. This is what's amazing. Like if this was a work of art, it would have diluted it. The image would have smeared or vanished. None of that happens. The image is still, as you just saw with the classic invert on my phone, very apparent. And so it survives all of that, but it did come in contact. I mean, millions of people have likely touched this shroud. I mean, it would be brought out for baby baptisms. That upper right corner would be cut off. Like if I really loved you, Tucker, I would give you a piece of the shroud to take home with you after having dinner with me if you visited me in one of my castles. I mean, so it's known that aspects of the shroud were given out even for indulgences. So in the top left, you can see with the naked eye, anyone who pulls up the shroud can see it is a contaminated area of the shroud. It's dark. It's been touched a lot. It's the fringes of the shroud. And so there's an invisible weave there that many great scholars believe that was patched. And so the scholars said, whatever you do, don't carbon date the corners of the shroud because it's been so contaminated. It's a contaminated sample. Get in the middle of the shroud and carbon date those samples. So what did this community do? These 7 labs that were supposed to carbon date it, actually only 3 labs did. No one ever answered why 7 labs didn't do it. It wasn't done blindly. 3 labs, Tucson, Arizona, Zurich, Switzerland, and Oxford, England, carbon date the shroud. What part did they take? The upper left-hand corner that any non-scientist can see as a contaminated sample. And they carbon dated that
Well, it's
sample.
a patch.
Exactly. Thank you for noticing that. Exactly.
You're talking about the...
Very top left.
That's a different color.
Right. It's dark. That is what they carbon dated. And then, ironically, the British Museum suppresses the data, the raw data of the carbon dating for 29 years. Only in 2017, through a French attorney who I'm going to be with very soon at the International Shroud Conference in St. Louis. I encourage people to check it out. The French attorney, through the equivalent of a Freedom of Information Act, finally got the raw data released for the carbon dating. And what did they find? The sample that was used to carbon date it has cotton within the sample, not fine linen. The rest of the shroud is fine linen. That's indicative it was patched. So this whole bias towards the shroud is based on bad science and suppressed science, by the way, 29 years suppressed.
I don't know if was there cotton in Europe or the Middle East?
Yeah, there was in Europe because they would use it for patchwork, these invisible weaves, these seamstresses.
No, right. But 2,000 years ago.
No, yeah. This was fine linen. We don't have any other shrouds with cotton. This is the patchwork that was done in medieval Europe to protect the shroud, to preserve it. And so that is what the carbon... So if we're stacking up all of the evidence for and against the shroud, we're in the middle of presenting a voluminous amount of evidence for the authenticity of the shroud and that it is indeed Jesus's burial cloth. And we have one bit of evidence to deny the shroud, this erroneous carbon-14 dating.
Has anyone ever carbon dated the linen?
No. No, it's not been allowed to be dated since.
Well, I don't understand how you could carbon date what's obviously a patch.
Right.
that I can see
Well,
from
we
here.
weren't even made aware of what was dated until the data came out.
So they knew that there was cotton in the sample, which just immediately
Right.
disqualifies it.
Exactly. It's a contaminated sample.
And they knew that, and they hid it for almost 30 years?
Right.
We're sure?
Welcome to Shroud of Turin research. Yeah, and Ray Rogers, the chemist who said, give me 15 minutes in the scientific method, debunked it in a scientific journal and then sadly died a month later of cancer. And his debunk of the carbon dating got no traction. So I'm happy to bring it up on your program and give him all the credit.
So why not just take, I mean, it's kind of a significant question, right?
Right.
If it's 2,000 years old,
because the Catholic Church is afraid of it. And the Catholic Church has still never come out in support of the shroud. Are you aware of that? Like they're ambivalent about it. They're indifferent about it. And I was just in Turin, so I'm thankful for everyone there who welcomed me. I met all of the scientists. My friend Enrico, the chemist, who the shroud is now currently kept in what's called a reliquary. It's the exact size of the shroud. The company, this is fascinating information, the company that creates all of the materials for the International Space Station is based in Turin. That same company created the box that preserves the shroud.
So where is it, in a church?
It's in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, in this reliquary, this box. You can walk in and see it today, but it's a covered box, and it's 99% argon gas, because the two enemies of the shroud right now are light and oxygen. And so they're preserving it. So the Catholic Church has no interest in educating people about the shroud. Again, I'm thankful that you're having me on.
I don't understand why.
Their only interest is in conservation. So they're conserving the shroud right now. The shroud hasn't been on display since 2015 publicly. We don't know when it will be on display again. And yet it's this key to the whole message of Christianity. I mean, it is the death, burial, and resurrection in an artifact. Nothing else does that outside of the Bible except the shroud.
I'm confused. Why would a Christian church want to hide what appears to be physical proof
of the resurrection,
of the core story of its religion?
Right.
What's the answer?
I wish I knew.
Who makes that decision?
The Pope. So technically the Pope is the custodian of the shroud.
And that's because
it was left to the Pope, not the Catholic Church. And I was there during conclave, which was an interesting experience.
But it doesn't seem to make any sense. Do you think they're worried that it would turn out to be fake?
Right. I think so. I can't speak. I don't know what's in their mind.
But just to be clear, so far as you know, the shroud itself, the actual linen cloth, has never been radiocarbon dated, just the patch.
Just the upper left corner, which is a contaminated sample. So it was the patched sample, not a fine linen sample.
Yeah, so not the real thing.
Correct. And that's not just me. That's Paulo de Lazzaro. That's Bruno Barberis. I mean, there's Ray Rogers. I would encourage people to study these scientists.
Is there any way, doesn't radiocarbon dating destroy the sample?
Absolutely.
Right. So,
25% of CR14 dating is thrown out anyways. So my area of specialty is paleography and codicology, how we date Bible manuscripts. And we date Bible manuscripts through paleography, not through carbon dating. We date it through handwriting styles to get a date range for roughly 100 years to date Bible manuscripts. We don't do that because, to your point excellently, it destroys the actual artifact.
Is there any other way to date it?
Yes. In fact, it's been dated. That's the thing. Again, thank you so much for asking these questions, Tucker. It has been dated in 4 other scientific ways that conclusively all show that it's a first century artifact. We have breaking news on your show. Wide-angle X-ray scattering out of the Institute of Crystallography in Rome has shown that the shroud has been getting old. It's been decomposing. It's been degenerating for 2,000 years. They took a sample of a shroud from Masada that's conclusively dated to AD 70, and they compared the shroud of Turin using wide-angle X-ray scattering. This is the Institute of Crystallography. And what they found is that the samples have both been getting old at the same time for 2,000 years. So it's not been getting old for 700 years. It's been getting old for 2,000 years. There's another study done. Linen is made from flax, and it has a substance called vanillin in it, vanillin. And it takes hundreds, if not thousands of years for there to be no trace elements of vanillin in the fine linen. Guess how much vanillin there is in the Shroud of Turin? 0. So if it was 700 years old, there would still be traces of vanillin chemically. There's no vanillin in the shroud. So I don't want to bore you with these details, but they're very important.
They're not boring at all.
There have been other scientific studies that have been suppressed that all of the other studies, to answer your question, have proven that the shroud is 2,000 years old from a scientific standpoint.
I think it's pretty wild that the authorities, the British Museum, is that what you said?
Right.
Would hide relevant data.
Suppress it for 29 years. I mean, the professor...
Why, how can you do... How is that science? How... I don't understand.
One of the lab officials, Tucker, I mean, this is all... I mean, if people just read for themselves and think for themselves, I mean, one of the professors who wrote on the chalkboard 1260 to 1390 was given a $5 million endowed chair right after this announcement in 1988.
By whom?
By his cabal that was backing him.
Huh.
So again, people need to follow where the evidence leads. And again, I'm following forensic science. I'm following the iconography. I mean, the blood samples alone, the hematology. If we wanted to fake the shroud, do you realize we'd have to kill someone? We would have to get blood, pre-mortem blood, and then we would have to stab them in the heart and get post-mortem blood and translucent pulmonary edema and smear that. I mean, and then we'd have to know that there are certain plants that only bloom in Jerusalem in April. We would then we'd have to know the provenance of the shroud. I mean, there's over 30 things a hoaxer would have to know to fake the shroud.
And then you'd have to apply it in some unknown fashion that cannot be replicated even now.
And then we would have to know, how do we change 2 microns deep, so surface level, and so we have a traveling exhibit right now that we're doing where I have 50 artifacts that show these things through infographics, and we have panel 13 in our traveling Who is the Man of the Shroud exhibit shows each fiber, each thread has around 250 to 200 fibers. So you think about 0.2 microns of each fiber of each thread. I mean, that's how superficial the image is. We couldn't fake that. No one can. We don't have the technology to do that.
I'm fixated on the idea that the custodians of the science around this at the British Museum, which is the most famous museum in the world, whose job is to search for the truth, that's what science is, the pursuit of truth, that they would hide facts and mislead the public on purpose. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because this is a religious artifact that speaks to the veracity of the world's greatest religion, which has many opponents.
Exactly.
So it does raise questions about other archaeological finds that are relevant to Christianity. And the big one, of course, are the Qumran scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, found right after the Second World War by a shepherd.
1948, a Bedouin.
Yep. Yeah, a Bedouin shepherd boy throws a stone into a cave. Here's something pottery breaking, goes up there, and all these jars with these scrolls in them. That, of course, was the same year that Israel became a nation, 1948, and they become the custody, or some of them become the custody of the Israeli government. And they're written right around the time of Jesus, maybe a little before. Correct me if I'm wrong on the facts here.
250 BC.
250 BC. This monastic community called the Qumran community in Qumran.
Right.
And they're, many portions of what we refer to as the Old Testament. At least that's what we've been told. But then I've always wondered, these are in the custody largely of a government, and they slow rolled. I mean, they could just take pictures of every single fragment and put them on the internet.
Right.
And anyway, there are a lot of questions, but my main question to you, I think you know something about this, is do we have all the Qumran scrolls that are in custody? Are they available to the public and to scholars?
No, because they keep coming to light. I mean, there's the Cairo Geniza fragments. So there's also Dead Sea Scrolls outside of the Dead Sea, if that makes sense. So there's the Cairo Geniza fragments. There's this brings up a great question. I mean, the antiquity of all artifacts is sketchy, to be clear. And, when you look at the great artifacts from history, how people come into control of these artifacts, there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of corruption involved, candidly.
But is it plausible, or is there any evidence that scripture from the Qumran cache, the Dead Sea Scrolls, has been suppressed?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely.
Certainly?
I mean, there's absolutely ways in which there is a demonic hatred towards anything biblical. I mean, I not just in the Dead Sea Scrolls community. I mean, I've seen this with all biblical fragments. There's there is a hyper-skepticism towards biblical fragments, that a framework, a worldview that we don't foist on anything else except biblical fragments.
You know, as long as they're available to the public, I'm okay with that.
Right.
As long as people can, you know, have the information, decide for themselves. But my concern is that they're not available to the public.
Well, I worked in the Griffith Papyrology Lab in Oxford, which is formerly known as the Sackler Library. They took the Sackler name off it.
Did, yeah.
So, but when I was there, it was the Sackler.
They're killing a lot of people.
So,
yeah.
So now it's just the Ashmolean. So in the Griffith Papyrology Lab, I mean, we have 500,000 fragments that have not been categorized. They have not been cataloged. So, I mean, I say this as one who does this. I mean, yeah, there are biblical fragments that have not been brought to light.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's
how hard is it to take a picture of them and put it on the internet?
Exactly. And there are great people doing it. I mean, my friend Dan Wallace at the Center for Studying New Testament Manuscripts, their entire aim is to photograph as many biblical texts as they can and to make them available. So there are great groups out there that are doing it. But the hoops they have to jump through with these libraries and where these manuscripts are located.
Why would it be controversial to take, you know, a 2,000-year-old fragment of scripture, take a picture of it, and upload it onto the internet? Why would that be? Why would someone want to prevent that?
I can only speak to my experience, and so many of the papyrologists who I've worked with, so many of those are people that work with the papyri. So biblical fragments are papyri first, and then that was the original work of the scripture, and then of course scrolls. Honestly, so many of them.
So papyri made from papyrus plants that grow in wetlands.
The early church was innovative. It used something called a codex. It did not take scrolls from Jews. It wanted to have this book form with writing on the recto and verso, the front and back of each page. And it was cheap. It was inexpensive. It could be hidden, unlike these scrolls that were, I mean, I have Jewish scrolls. They're beautiful, but they're heavy. They're hard to transport. They're only written on one side. You had to unroll the whole thing.
And they're made of animal skins?
Right, parchment.
Parchment would be
bovine. They're all bovine. They're animal. They're calf.
Yeah. Okay. So but any of this stuff is not. I mean, like, what would be the justification for keeping it from the public?
Yeah, well, I mean, so much of it comes out of the Enlightenment movement of Europe. I mean, coming out with what we called higher criticism, the German scholars, the height of German scholarship in the 1800s, that Jesus didn't exist. If he did, he was probably gay with a mortgage.
No, I get it. I get it.
And then
but
you have this Pontius Pilate didn't exist. And so much of that influenced modernity in a way that, I mean, has wreaked havoc on all of our div colleges.
Sure, but I'm just saying now, 2025, if you have a bunch of scrolls that are found in a cave in 1948 that speak directly to, you know, the world's great religions, how can a government be allowed to hide those from?
But you're immediately accused of being a sensationalist. I've been ridiculed and attacked for bringing the shroud to light. I mean, you're called a popularizer. I mean, this is a very high view, hyper skeptical community that catalogs biblical manuscripts. All you have to do is go to Society of Biblical Literature with 5,000 Bible scholars to see how crazy some of these people are.
I'm sure
there is a hatred towards truth. I mean, the man who I defend in my thesis, I write about this in my book, Body of Proof. I've spent 3 years studying the physical bodily resurrection of Jesus. I've written a 93,000-word Überlieferungsgeschichte, history of resurrection belief in the Judeo-Christian motif. And I come to my Viva, where in England it's pass-fail. So if you fail your PhD Viva in England, you can never do a redo again. You get what's called an MPhil, and there's no do-overs. So I come to my defense, Tucker, and I have a Bible scholar who did not believe in the miraculous, did not believe in the historicity of the resurrection. And he looks at me and he says, Jeremiah, do you actually believe the resurrection happened, or is that just imaginative storytelling?
Yeah. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. You know, that people who, I mean, how many Episcopal priests believe in God?
Yeah, none.
No, I know some who do, but like the minority. Yeah, that doesn't shock me that they would, you know, the corruption exists. It's the suppression of information. It's Wikipedia that drives me crazy. It's gatekeeping information that prevents the public and interested parties, researchers from even knowing that information exists.
Right.
Like,
well,
that is so sinister.
I'm a victim of it. I mean, I was taught that the shroud was a Catholic relic and there was no science behind it at all. I mean, I was taught that at the intellectual Jerusalem that is Oxford. I mean, so I'm a victim of this. I understand it completely. And I guess I'm numb to it, Tucker, that it's my world. I've been in it professionally in the academy since 2009. It's just a miracle if truth actually gets out. And that's why I'm so grateful for your program.
Do you have hope that there will be further study of the shroud, or do we not need any?
I'm doing all I can to make that happen. This is changing people's lives, this truth, because when we look at this mystery, it actually reveals the message of Christianity, God's love for us, and that he sent Christ to die in our place.
Hello 啊，大家好！開始可能啲人咧已經坐到悶晒啦，因為太長咧，而家得翻12個人真係陰公，同埋今日都過唔到千啊！你睇下佢呢個真係一個基督徒嚟㗎，呢個Jeremiah 耶利米啊叫中文譯耶利米，佢真係一個虔誠基督徒嚟嘅，同埋咧佢真係用證據咯，佢唔係用感覺，佢係用證據。去話俾人知，因為咧好多嘢咧，我哋要傳俾人知，我哋去做見證人，就唔係走去咧用感覺去話俾人知，要信耶穌。所以我一路咧嗰陣時一開始所以我而家個 mission 咧就越嚟越明顯啊，因為我一開始係講歷史線嘅。我係要人哋睇條歷史線，相信條歷史線，同埋每個人條歷史線係點樣。但係我表達能力未必咁好啦，但係我都會盡力，即係向呢個方向越做越好，講到俾大家知，每個人相信呢條歷史線，神復活呢條歷史線啊嘛，唔係感覺嚟嘅。當你相信感覺嘅話咧，係。你點知你個感覺啱定錯咧？但係呢個歷史，啲人想推翻啊！呢個裹屍布唔存在，好多或者喺大陸嗰啲啱嚟嘅朋友咧，佢未必聽過咩叫裹屍布添啊！就係裹屍布就係包耶穌死咗之後上完十字架包住佢嗰塊布啊！咁包住嗰塊布點解會有啲咁嘅印係嘛？一笪嘢嘅啲血跡嚟嘅，咁啲血跡咁點樣乾咗啊？點樣？佢就係頭先嗰個好重要嘅今時今以前係做唔到嘅一個科技嚟嘅，就係叫做 wide angle radiation 啊嘛而家佢有咗呢啲，跟住佢就開始再明白到點解可以影到耶穌個樣。我哋以前咧〜會喺度諗究竟點樣可能啊？因為你試下攞塊布啊，整到成塊面係血，跟住去攞開佢乾咗一陣間放多排變咗樣㗎啦嘛。但係佢呢塊布係唔會喎，佢就可以出到一個嗰種，因為個科技，因為嗰個科技嗰個就有呢個 wide angle。可以有呢個 wide angle 嘅 radiation 咧咁就變咗可以見到，即係知道，同埋可以知道咧呢個復活，耶穌復活點樣復活法根本係一種好超嗰個 radiation， 即係個身體發出嗰種能量先可以嚟，因為我哋都唔知啦，斷估嘅啫嘛，個個都係咁佢700幾個傷口喎，全部傷痕喎，咁佢點樣可以喺3日之內好返啊？係咪先？咁呢啲嘢又係冇人知噶嘛？佢嘅解釋就係一種超，佢都唔係正式係解釋嚟咯，佢都係只係一種假設咯。咁但係最緊要嗰樣嘢就係我哋睇到神點樣去愛我哋啊嘛！佢唔上十字架都得㗎，佢走落嚟講聲啊！ 我而家就饒恕你哋，都一樣得㗎佢就係公義嚟㗎嘛咁佢要代罪喎，呢個程序，代罪呢個程序就咪上十字架搞掂咯，斬頭又好，乜嘢都好啦使唔使上十字架咧？即係呢個就係神揀一個最殘酷嘅酷刑嚟同我哋頂我哋呢啲罪啊嘛。呢個就係基督教福音嘅核心，唔係保羅啊！基督教嘅核心就係耶穌死復活。有冇證據啊？呢個就係證據。你可以唔信呢個歷史，你但係唔可以唔信呢個證據啊嘛。原來仲係連天主教都唔敢將呢樣嘢公開，又喺度撳成嗰啲咁嘢。天主教其實好邪惡㗎，個個仲喺度攞住呢啲天主教嘅傳統，你就係一樣同天主教一樣咁邪惡。點解天主教唔肯承認呢樣嘢？所有咩即係嗰啲咩使徒信經嗰啲咁嘅嘢咧，係天主教最中意用㗎啦。啲規則咪懟俾你哋規矩你要守呢隻規矩如果唔係你落地獄，個地獄咧就俾火燒，跟住啲人咪驚咯。又係靠嚇啊嘛，就共產黨一樣嘅啫嘛，威逼利誘一開始嗰陣時，啲人唔使交稅，咁做基督徒咯，唔使交稅咁即係成個都係腐敗嘅制度嚟嘅，嗰陣時都係唔係即係究竟係咁清高你做基督徒做得，個個以為做基督徒做得好清高扮撚晒嘢係嘛？唔係好清高嘅啫，夠姜。真真正正基督徒要斬頭啊！你試下同班友仔講你要斬頭之後即刻唔信啦，好簡單，個個都係扮嘅啫嘛真真正正要做個基督徒要斬頭行出嚟就係我而家有條友走嚟指住支槍話你係咪信耶穌？我梗係信耶穌啦，因為呢個係歷史事實嚟㗎嘛，佢係有復活，我信佢有咩問題啊？你要肥我咪肥我咯，咪肥啊，係嘛？起碼你呢一樣嘢你就第一步你做，所有你譬如好似頭先我而家出咗個 poll 咧，都係得77% 嘅人喺度啦，幾多人嘅得13個 vote 啦，係咪？77% 佢冇 number 用 percentage 即係大部分人都信咗，仲有33% 未信咯，23% 未信咯。咁你未信你唔緊要㗎，你咪追求呢個歷史事實啫嘛，冇嘢㗎。追求呢個歷史實真實，真係，同埋你睇下呢個歷史事實嘅背後意義啦。耶穌真係死咗復活啦！耶穌死復活關我叉事咩？一樣得㗎，因為你歷史一個歷史事實，你係可以接受、否定同埋釋測3樣㗎嘛。咁呢個就係個歷史事實但係你見到嘅話，你就而家係點咧？而家去呢個裹屍布點解咁重要啊？因為真係可以睇到個700幾傷痕。以前你睇啲卡通片電影出邊啲圖畫，話個耶穌個冠冕都係一個咁嘅圓形咁嘅嘢嘅，佢頭先 show 咗出嚟就因為呢個裹屍布見到啲印位好似唔係幾啱喎，咁佢估應該係用呢個係成嚿好似頂帽咁唔係咁嘅圈嘅，係成頂帽嗰個荊棘冠冕一吉落去50幾個傷口 佢唔係就咁俾你放上，佢係壓落去嗰隻啊，幾痛啊！又俾人打到眼都盲埋嚇，即係我覺得嚇。我真係覺得神係可以用好多方式，但係用一個最淒厲、最慘嘅方式嚟啊！梗係啦，佢係神喎，咁佢會復活㗎嘛？哇！但係大佬啊，但係咁樣捱法喎，咁樣痛法喎，咁樣死法嘅，即係叫冇好死。神都可以揀個有好死嘅方法啦。我都係贖罪啫，同你哋班友，我揀個好死嘅方法嚟同你贖罪，得唔得？但係唔係啊，神揀一個唔好死嘅方法啊！咁樣上十字架係最殘酷嘅，喺當年都唔知係咪因為就係嗰陣時最殘酷嘅方法先耶穌先出世，我都唔知啊！但係真係好殘酷。所以我覺得呢個咧就重複睇幾次，我每次睇我好感動，好感動係因為我係有人性啊，我有人性，我睇到呢啲慘嘢，就唔係因為有聖靈啊，乜聖靈住喺我裏邊啊？呢啲咁嘅嘢咧我都唔知嗰啲人話佢自己有聖靈住喺佢裏邊嗰啲人，都唔知係咪真係有聖靈住喺佢裏邊啦。佢話佢有咪有咯，荷爾蒙啊，肯定喺佢哋裏邊有啊，荷爾蒙呢個好簡單嘅啫嘛，個個都中意妄稱神嘅名，就好似天主教點解唔敢攞呢卷嘢出嚟做？因為佢覺得夠噶啦，耶穌好偉大噶啦，上咗十字架。跟住之後佢就推咩啊？成班聖人啊嘛，幾偉大呢班人，殉道者成班幾偉大，全部封聖噶唔使全部封聖，大佬淨係講耶穌就得啦，使乜講彼得點樣死啊？講點樣講嗰班殉道者啊？使乜啊？講耶穌點樣死啊？就已經夠啦。所以我而家話，而家啲教會其實仲有個教會呢個字，其實係中文呢個教會，英文叫 church， 中文叫教會，都幾好聽嘅，其實叫做教會啊。而家啲係叫教唔會啊，根本都唔係教會，係叫教唔會啊。個個都係保羅教。保羅徒啊，就唔係基督徒啊，個個都係睇保羅多過睇耶穌啊。跟住仲喺度拗點解保羅緊要啊？我冇話保羅唔緊要啊，我就係話要耶穌緊要啲啫。就係呢個就係嗰個重點啦嘛。所以點解我琴日續完咗之後咧，本來咧就又係講呢番説話，跟住之後唔記得開咪而家又冇開咪，咪又冇開咪㗎，又今日又開咪係又少咗個，又都唔知啲人點解一講耶穌就走晒，因為先入為主，一班自以為是，所以我而家唔中意嗰啲人開始，一班自以為是嘅基督徒，其實係錯晒，學錯晒，跟住之後準備去教錯人，第日上天堂就大鑊啦！佢哋大鑊啊，唔係我大鑊啊！佢哋再唔諗下，佢係咪信耶穌定係信保羅？係佢哋嘅事啊！我都話啦，邊個信唔信耶穌關我撚事咩？但係 我嘅責任就係要話呢個歷史事實出嚟俾你哋知啊嘛，跟住你去接受、拒絕或者識察都係你哋嘅選擇。連神啊咁有 power 創造呢個宇宙嘅神啊，都係俾我哋自己去選擇噶嘛。神自己 present 咗出嚟，佢創造呢個宇宙已經 present 咗出嚟啦。好似我而家咁就 present 咗，好似呢個Jeremiah 耶利米嘅 Jeremiah 佢咁樣，佢都係啦，佢都係 present 一啲歷史事實出嚟啫嘛。仲係嗰陣時唔知幾多年啦，頭先寫低咗嚇。呢個唔係天主教嗰陣時係要1983年啊，天主教先有呢個擁有權啊。1983年啊，原來之前仲，所以咧之後咧就好多謠言，就話呢塊假啊、成啊呢啲咁嘅嘢咯。嗰陣時我都有聽好多古仔嘅，我都信耶，即係我都唔係信耶穌嗰陣時都唔會信啦，都唔係信耶穌又唔會去對呢啲嘢有研究咯。好似而家咁點啊，一班人喺度聽緊，好多都唔會對呢啲有興趣嘅。呢個歷史事實啊，我嘅責任我就要俾一個基礎俾大家去信耶穌，我唔使俾一個基礎你去信保羅，就係咁簡單啦。我要你信神啊嘛，我個基礎係要你信神，我基礎唔係要你信保羅，好簡單一個道理啊嚇！啲人中意信咪信，中唔中係嘛？所以咧，而家又少咗個人啦。右面就本來可以1000人喺度俾驚喜大家嘅，而家又少咗嚇。咁咧，而家咧我都已經捱咗就嚟3個鐘。Okay, let me see. Who the fuck are you? Takes your lap. Okay. Do you know what I was talking about earlier? You don't. I was in the topic. You are so bad, low manner, low life person. I'm talking a topic. You are not interested to follow my topic and try to distract me. You are low life. Okay? You are a piece of shit. Okay? Once I answer, you stop talking. You 100% you're a piece of shit. Okay? Go back to the beginning. Watch everything I say. Well, learn something. Okay? 啲人係咁噶嚇，個個都係所以我同佢講個半桶水嗰啲古仔啦，係嘛？咁啊，多謝咁多位嘅訂閱啦。如果即係都係今日都係過唔到嚇。Oh, I do it myself. I'm good at doing thumbnail. I'm a graphic designer. Okay? Thank you, thank you. Please subscribe. Subscribe. 訂閱佢之後咧，記得撳個鐘仔。當你撳個鐘仔咧，我每日咧去直播咧，就會大家都會有睇到噶啦。我每次我都會有唔同嘅話題啦。今日咧就 overlap 咗，因為我覺得呢個琴日呢個好重要啊，尤其是對基督徒，尤其是對信啊初信嚟講，我覺得更加重要嘅基礎。就係唔好咧感情用事啊！我哋信耶穌唔係靠感覺㗎，我哋信耶穌係一個事實基於一個事實 去信耶穌嘅。如果你基於感覺去信耶穌咧，將來有一日我肯定你會唔信耶穌，因為咧衝擊一定會有嚇。到有一日真係有人用支槍指住你個頭問你係咪信耶穌嚇，你可能會放棄。我唔想啲人信耶穌，就係因為啲人把支槍指住我個頭，我就放棄。唔使放棄嘅。好多時我哋一路做，我哋一路唔好聽一啲人冇經驗、冇經歷嘅人講一啲嘢，跟住咧就認為係好嘢。一定要自己去睇嚇。上帝未死啊嘛，嗰啲人就妄稱神嘅名嘅人就一定要注意，要小心啊嚇。嗰啲人係好危險嘅，因為佢會借用神嘅名。任何一個人借神個名講任何一啲嘢咧，你都要注意，要小心咯嚇，警惕咯叫做。又唔可以否認佢嘅，但係你唔係警惕咯。所以審判又唔係你，到時上帝話：喂，你做乜搭我朵啊？亂咁搭我朵啊咁啊！咁啊，佢要同上帝負責噶嘛。我哋自己就唔好亂咁搭上帝朵咯。係就係，唔係就唔係咯。嚇，好多嘢根本上帝俾晒我哋成套架撐喺度，喺晒度。我哋就係要做，即係用啊！就算自由意志啊，我哋都要去學點樣用我哋嘅自由意志，係服侍神、榮神益人啦咁講，或者叫嚇做鹽做光最好，最緊要嘅做鹽做光，呢個就係耶穌教噶嘛。耶穌啊，登山寶訓啊，你一年得52個星期啊，冇一間教會夠膽可以52個就係攞登山寶訓啊嚟做講章啊！有幾多個可督啊？係嘛？你淨係登山寶訓，你有排你講啊，唔係咁容易講噶。因為登山寶訓好多人生體驗喺入邊嘅，要嗰啲人嘅背景啊，要做功課啊，因為佢同嗰班人嗰個背景，唔係咪念口簧咁背聖經背撚完就好似話好聖潔啊，係嘛？好屬靈啊，嗰啲冇噶，嗰啲係天主教遺留落嚟嘅。你睇啲人扮晒嘢噶嘛，着晒袍噶嘛，啊！全部都係有個 title 噶嘛，中意跟住搞細路噶嘛，嗰啲嚇都要小心咯嚇。天主教聽到都恐怖啦，同神嗰個命令違反咗啊！神啊，生養眾多，遍滿全地，你啊搞啲咩牧師唔係搞啲神父出嚟，唔可以結婚，神父修女。係嘛？呢個性慾係神俾嘅，正常嘅人有性慾，一黐鳩線嘅啲人走去信天主教嗰啲人真係有病咯嚇！冇辦法㗎，因為啊憑感覺啊嘛，冇即係唔識用腦啊，淨係識用荷爾蒙嚇，咁冇辦法啦。咁佢哋好自為之啦，因為反正佢每個人都要同上帝交代嘅嚇。我自己有我自己又會同上帝交代，就唔使咁多人擔心嚇。好多人都要同自己同上帝交代嘅。咁今日咧就去唔到1000啦，又係咁啊，好抱歉就開唔到一個驚喜俾大家啦。咁我哋聽日再見啦，OK，拜拜。